lockup. Right now he's Robodoing Terry Funk in a bionic elbow. Sends him right out of the ring.
Welcome to another edition of the Shoot Interview Series. Today we're joined by a true superstar in the world of professional wrestling, Bill Dundee.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for being here today with us.
My pleasure.
My first question I want to ask is, what was life growing up in Australia like?
Well, I actually grew up in Scotland. This is where it kind of got screwed up because grew up in Scotland until I was 16. Then we went to Australia, and I lived in Australia for 16 years. So when all the publicity got here to Nick Gullis's wrestling office, they thought we were both Australian. I used to wear a kilt before Piper wore one. So, and I was trying to be a Scotsman then, but people said, well, how do you wear a kilt? You're from Australia. I said, no, brother, I'm from there. It got so hard, you know, to keep explaining to people why I wore a kilt. So I said, okay, I'm Australian. So I'm actually a Scotsman.
So as a kid, were you a wrestling fan growing up?
Yeah, we used to watch, you know, like Mick McManus and Billy Robinson and Tony Charles. They were all, but they wrestled. You know, they wrestled left hand, right hand, and it was all a little different from the American version. Then when I went to Australia, so I was like, first watched it in Britain because it was on every afternoon.
Right.
So then my family moved to Australia, and I went to Australia with them, and there wasn't really much wrestling going on, so I kind of joined the circus, and they had a carnival part of the thing, and my uncle had a judo school in Scotland, so I had learned to do judo, and two guys that was professional wrestlers used to come and work out there, so I got my first taste there off them. So with the carnival part of the circus, I was a little cute looking devil that stood out front and said, I'll fight him, but it was all a work just like we did, you know, so that's how I kind of got into it. Then Jim Barnett came and he brought Georgia Championship Wrestling, or which was Georgia Championship Wrestling in the end, but he just called it Championship Wrestling. He came to Australia and he brought Mark Loon, King Curtis, Skull Murphy, Brute Bernard, and this is back in '64, I think. But I'd started wrestling in the clubs over there at '62, so that was my first television. We got to go down and put the boys over every Saturday morning. That's, you know.
Now in Australia, was it true that you were a trapeze artist at all in the circus?
Well, I was trying to do that, and the slack wire and the tightrope and all that thing. Then I discovered girls. Kind of ruins a lot of careers. You chase the girls instead of the trapeze.
At like what point in your life did you realize that you wanted to actually be a wrestler and be in the business?
From really the first time I saw it in Scotland. The first time I saw it, I was, I can do that. You know, some of them things you know you could think you can do, and from the very first match I ever saw on television, I thought, boy, I'd like to do that.
As far as training and learning how to take bumps and the psychology, who was your mentor?
Ken Fuhrer. That was a guy in Australia, and well, like I said, when Barnett came over in '64, see, we wrestled all the way different. We did a lot more wrestling. It wasn't so much psychology and the kicking and the punching and the bumps. It was more wrestling holds, putting them on, getting out. Same in Australia, same as England was. But when the Americans came, Skull Murphy, Brute Bernard, and Mark Loon, and Curtis Iakawa, they were, and Bulldog Bob Brower, they were into bumps and psychology and timing. So I watched a lot of them. Mark Loon and I was pretty good buddies, and he was the booker over there. So, you know, but Ken Fuhrer was an Australian guy that was around, you know, before me, and he kind of understood the American way, and he taught us. He had a school we went to. Right. But there wasn't a lot of people allowed to go back in them days. You had to be able to at least wrestle before you could get into one. It wasn't just your body that got you there.
Were you ever personally discouraged at any time?
No, because I always knew it was great.
Okay.
And I was told every day I was too small.
I was going to ask you about that. Did guys try to discourage you because of your size?
Yeah, but I don't think they really tried to discourage you because I was only weighed 160 pounds. I mean, back in the early 60s, you know. I mean, '62 I started wrestling, so you couldn't grow no taller, but I got up to about 230, about 228, 231, as big as ever was. You know, but I had to put a little weight on. But yeah, they'd say, Bill, you're too small. They won't buy a ticket to see a guy 160 pounds. Doesn't matter how good you are. As well, they'll buy a ticket to see me, by God.
As far as Australia, how did the territory run? Like, were the towns close and stuff like that?
No, they flew every day.
Really?
They do Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, Western Australia. That was the major cities that flew to them, but you made drives to like Geelong, which is 50 miles out of Melbourne, or Ballarat, which is outside. You know, they would do a little spot show, but they didn't do many spot shows. They just basically stayed the big shows and flew.
So they had a lot of Americans coming in here and there?
Yeah, they had all the guys on top were Dusty Out's where I first met Dusty Rhodes and Dick Murdoch when they were the Texas Outlaws.
What are some early memories of those guys?
Whew. Bet like he's no different now than he was then. He's just a little quicker, I guess. He was wild then, and woo, what you see is what you get with Big Dust now.
What led you coming over to the United States?
Well, it was just like everything else. I mean, if you're in Britain or even the pop stars and the singers, everybody wants to come to America. There's always more money. It doesn't matter what profession you're in, there's more money in America. Well, all them boys that was over here, they would come to Australia for like 6 months at a time, or they may stay a year or whatever. And there were all the great big guys like Mark Lewin and Curtis Iakawa, you know, 6'2", and you know the great 280 guys. Then Bobby Shane came. He wasn't much bigger than me and George Barnes. He's about 5'11", 210, 220. So he said, "You guys will get over good in Tennessee." He said, "And I know Jerry Jarrett's the booker and Nick Goulas is the promoter." He said, "I'm pretty good buddies with Jarrett. We'll go call him." So we did right then, that day. He looked at his watch and the time was they were at the office. So he said, "I got 2 guys here that would pretty do good for you in Tennessee." You know, took a year to get the visa, to get from there to here. But anyway, Bobby Shane was the guy that got us here. But we always wanted to come here, but it was hard to get here.
Right.
Because the big guys really couldn't help you. I mean, you know, they're interested in other big guys. They don't want to wrestle little bitty fellas like me.
What were your initial impressions of the Memphis territory when you first got there?
Well, we first got there, the house was $4,000. They had just, Lawler and Jarrett had got into a beef and kind of, well, I quit, no you don't, I fire you type thing. And anyway, they parted company for a little bit. So the timing was right. Barnes and I came in there and they were looking for something. So we was the first match, the first week in Memphis, the second match, the third week in Memphis, but the fourth match, and they shot the angle on that day, and on the 5th week it was sold out. So we thought, damn, this is great. But we're, you know, we were greener in grass. We'd just done jobs in Australia. You know, we'd put everybody over, and you know, so we thought, damn, this is just so. And it was easy. I mean, they didn't like foreigners, and we were Australians, and just didn't care for us. You know.
So you're pretty much over as a heel right away, you mean?
Right away.
Cool.
As cute as I was too back then, by God. But they didn't want me to be one either. First day I walked in the office, Jerry Jarrett's mother said, "This guy needs to be a good guy." I said, "I ain't a good guy now." And they said, "Well, you look like a good guy." I said, "Well, I don't want to be." And then when they eventually switched me, I bitched and raised hell about it. I don't want to do it. I want to be a heel. But anyway, they did, and the rest is history, as they say. Here we are 30 years later.
What are your early memories of Jerry Jarrett?
Well, he was our size, and he was a very smart guy, and he's a very emotional guy. That's why he was good as a booker. I mean, what he felt, the people felt, you know. So he was, I thought he was just, Mark Lewin was the first real booker I ever hung around or understood what the booker was. And he was on a par with Lewin. He was very good, and he was very nice to you. You know, but it's like everything else. When you're overdrawing money, they all like you.
Right. A lot of people say Mark Lewin was one of the guys that had great finishes and stuff like that. He was a good finish
very
guy.
good. He was very good. I mean, you know, and they were so simple. What they've done at the business today, they've made it hard. They've made everything difficult. You know, kick a guy in the whatever's, and it should be over. Now it's a high spot. You know, and same jumping off the roof on a guy, off a ladder, on a table. I mean, back then it was a chain, or you do something, pile drive him on the floor. I was off 13 weeks. We did the deal, pile drive me on the floor, or the collar, sold that for the next 2 years. They don't understand that today. And Lewin was very good at that. His was simple and to the point. Jarrett's was too.
We'll talk about that coming up later, about, you know, today's wrestling and what's wrong and stuff like that, and your opinions. What about Eddie Marlin? What were your initial impressions of Eddie? And what was his role in the company early on in Memphis?
Well, by the time I got there, Jarrett was already married to his daughter, so he was already a sergeant by then. You know what I mean? He was the top babyface. Him and Tommy Gilbert was the babyface tag team when me and Barnes arrived here, and Tojo and Jarrett was a tag team, and that was about the babyface crew when we, you know, like I said, Lawler had quit, or whatever it was, he fell out with Jarrett, so he took off for about 6 months, and they brought him back. But anyway, so Eddie was already the father-in-law of Jerry Jarrett, and they were trying to build the company. See, when we left Australia, by the time we got here, he was the booker for Nick and Roy, and then he was the one that went out and got Louisville and Evansville and put Lexington together, him and his mother. So he owned parts of them towns, so he just got bigger and bigger in the company. But when we got here, he was the booker, and he was smart as anybody that's been in this business.
Was it pretty much your goal always to headline Memphis? I mean, did you want to go anywhere else when you first came over here?
Well, we were supposed to go to Florida. And well, you guys are all probably too young, I guess, in '75. But in '75, there's a plane wreck in Florida with Bobby Shane, Mike McCord. He's now Austin Idol, but he was Mike McCord then. The pilot, what's his name? Anyway, they overshot the runway, took off again. The plane stalled, and it came back down. Shane got killed, but he was the booker in Florida, so we was going to have a run in Memphis and go to Florida with Shane. Well, that was our plans, but he got killed, so we got over so damn good. Then Barnes, he went home 6 months, he only stayed 6 months, switched me babyface, and still here.
What are your early memories of Lou Thez when he came into Memphis?
Well, by the time I met Lou, he was you know, he was wanting to work with everybody, and he was always nice to me. And you know, the things he said you've heard about me maybe were, you know, because he was a hell of a wrestler, but he worked with everybody, and he was always good. Him and Danny Hodge were the tag team, and Dale Lewis, they were all real shoot wrestlers, you know what I mean? They were good wrestlers, but they worked with everybody. I mean, I always got along good with the three of them, so I have no bad memories of none of them guys.
What about Jerry Lawler? Some of your early memories of Jerry when you first started, you know?
About the same as they are now.
Right. Was there a lot of tension between the two because you guys would battle for the top?
No, it was just, well, you kind of knew Lawler was. I mean, he owned part of the company, and it's hard to, you know, they gave him part of it when they broke away, and Jarrett and Fuller went, and they broke away from, he got a third of the territory, so he had points in the office, so you can't beat that, you know what I mean? Even though you got over as good as him, or was over maybe better in some towns, and I knew what my role was, to get the people over, get them ready for Lawler, and we'll all keep eating. So I never really wanted the real top rung, maybe just a little niche below. Now when they put us together, me and Lawler, we were civil to one another, and we lived, you know, the same territory for 30 years, but we don't come to my house, I don't go to his, but we're a good business relation.
Right, so there was a lot of butting heads, but it was pretty much political.
Well, kind of, but it wasn't even button heads, because, you know, Lawler was the man, and, you know, he knew he was the man, and I knew what my job was, and that was why I was good at what I did, because I didn't really want his job.
Right.
But I went to all the towns. He quit going to all the towns, so it really was the workhorse in the end, because he'd just do Memphis. Huh. When he got more power and more points, he just wouldn't go to Louisville and Evansville. He just cut all the towns out, and he just worked Memphis.
Do you think that ever hurt the company at all?
Oh, no, they had the superstar carrying it.
Right.
But, you know, but no, it kind of helped, because when you needed him, or an angle, you say, you know, I need you, Lawler. You pop the deal, and he'd come, and you'd sell out again. So it kind of worked in everybody's favor. He didn't really like to go every night, and I liked to go every night.
Right. What are your early memories and thoughts of Jimmy Valiant? The
Boogie Man. I got along with Handsome. I love Handsome. We got along great from day one. He was just, you know, you're not like Handsome. I mean, he never has a bad word to say about nobody, and does whatever you want him to do, you know, business-wise, or, you know, he's just, I love Handsome.
What were some of your early angles in Memphis, some of your early programs and stuff like that?
Oh, early programs. Well, well, like I told you, the Paul Driver one with the Ken Remy and interns, that's how they switched me. I went to kind of stop them from beating up Eddie Marlin, because it was 3-on-1, and they threw me out the ring, and, you know, they beat the hell out of me, so we just had about a month's run there. So then they did the angle where Paul drove me on the floor. I was at like 13 weeks, walked around with a collar. That was about the first one, and drew like hell when we came back. So I said, well, this is how it works here, you know.
Huh. Did you pretty much have to work the gimmick everywhere you went?
Yeah, but that was it. You didn't do that, brother. And if they caught you riding heel and babyface together, you're done.
Right, right.
The right thing. And that's what's wrong with the business today. I mean, it's just, you know.
Without a doubt. What about your early memories of Dennis Condrey?
Well, Dennis was, who was he teamed up with? I think he was teamed up with Joe Sky, and they wore like cut-off short type deals, and, you know, just come to your knees in cowboy boots, but they were white cowboy boots, and they didn't really look, I said, damn, they were just real redneckish, but, you know, and they were. I mean, what it was money. I mean, they were trying to get into business, so they were doing the best they could with what they had. So Dennis, I mean, when he was with Joe Sky, he never set the woods on fire, but then as he got going, he became the Midnight Express, and him and Norvell Austin was teamed up, him and Bobby Eaton, Stan Lane. So the first time I saw him, I just thought he was just another wrestler, but then as he became the Midnight Express, he's a hell of a talent.
You saw potential.
Yeah, you know, he was.
What about your series with Tojo Yamamoto? You had a good series with Tojo and Eddie Marlin.
Yeah, that was, you know, they were a tag team. Tojo was heel, good babyface, or he was over with the people. They liked him, hated him. It didn't. He kind of like me. You could switch him back and forth. You know, I got along good with Tojo. He didn't like a lot of people, but, you know, if he liked you, he liked you, and if he didn't, he didn't. He'd sit in the dressing room, smoke a cigar, wouldn't say much to, you know, anybody. But I got along good with him.
What about Jackie Fargo?
Oh, I love Fargo. Fargo's a kind of like Handsome Jimmy. He's just, hey, Pally, you know, he did the thing, and he'd drink his Crown Royal, and he'd do his thing, and he was Jackie Fargo. And, well, I mean, that's how Lawler became the king. They did the match where, you know, he was the king of Memphis, and he put Lawler over, and Lawler got the crown, passed the torch, as you may say. So, you know, that's Fargo, a good guy.
Were you in there when Jimmy Cornette got his start?
Yeah, we was, yeah. You know how he got his start?
Taking pictures then.
That's right, but you know how he got the thing? Jerry Jarrett hated him. He says, I hate that son of a bitch. He said, and his mother is best friends with my mother.
Right.
He said, and he comes and he takes pictures every night. He said, you talk to him, he's just a smart ass. He said, do you think the people would hate him as much as I hate him? I said, I don't know what you're talking about. He said, let's make him a manager. Maybe they'll kill him. And I said, come on, man. He said, no, he said, I'm sweet. He said, he'll get over like hell. And that's how he got a job. Went and talked to his mother, and his mother said it was okay. coordinator, is now the manager.
Did any of the boys try to stiff him just to, initiate him?
No, I mean, it was all business back then. It's not like, I mean, how do you want to be a tough guy in a bent business? You know what I'm saying? If you sucker punch somebody, that don't make you tough.
Right, right.
And just likely to get you shot.
What about Jimmy Hart? Early memories of Jimmy Hart?
Oh, he was singing at the Holiday Inn. Me and Lawler was coming back from Louisville, so he says, man, I got to stop and see this buddy of mine. We was riding together one of the few times. Anyway, we stop at the Holiday Inn, and there's Hart singing. So I talked to him, and so he says, Lawler was really trying to get me in the big. I said, you make any money at this? He said, not near as much as you guys made, and I got to haul all this equipment around, singing, the guitars and all the things. So anyway, Lawler talked him into quitting that. Not that he was making a lot of money. They had that damn record there, Keep On Dancing, and he said he never made a dime off it. So anyway, he come into the wrestling business. So Jimmy was always nice to me. I mean, that day I met him, and to this day, I've never had a crossword with Jimmy Hart.
You ever get to work with Danny Hodge when he came into the territory?
Yeah, I loved Hodge. He was another good. That's what I'm telling you, them shooters. It was Danny Hodge, Lou Thez, Dale Lewis. They all were, people that said, well, maybe when they were younger, I don't know, they wanted to prove how tough they were, but by the time I got to from Australia to here, they work with you, do whatever.
What about Jack Briscoe?
Briscoe, I didn't have much to do with Briscoe. He was in Florida. I did a job for him a couple of times in Australia when he was the world's champion. They brought him over there. But as far as being, I was never really around Jack Jerry either. They were all Florida.
Okay. Who did you actually travel with? You talked about traveling once with Lawler. Who was your travel partner on the road?
You're looking at him.
You traveled by yourself?
Makes it most of the time. Well, in the office day when Jerry Jarrett, when you went to Memphis, now I'm talking the spot show, when you went to Memphis, the office, well, what, quote, the office was, it was Marlon, Jarrett, me. And Lawler was already living in Memphis, so
right.
We'd go Monday nights and you'd talk about all, what was going on with the TVs and all the other things. Monday nights then, and Louisville, me and Eddie would go, but the spot shows, I'd go myself. Or see, I always had to come back and be in the office. I couldn't stay over. See, a lot of the guys stayed over. Well, when you have the office job, you got to be in that damn office every day, so some of them don't want to come back. So, but I traveled with the rock and roll to some of the young guys, Bobby Eaton, Frank Morrell, Jeff Jarrett when he started. Me and Lawler never rode around much together, but.
I guess take us through a typical week in Memphis. Talk about Saturday was TV, and then Saturday night was the
Jonesboro, Arkansas.
Right.
We only had about 5 towns that we actually run and all made money. Excuse me. Well, Saturday morning you'd do Memphis TV, and that would be for the Monday night show. And then whatever you did on that Saturday morning, you followed it over to Jonesboro, because that's where you would test it, because you was coming to Memphis Monday. But if it didn't work in Jonesboro, you kind of knew it wasn't working Monday. So we would go over to Jonesboro, but usually sell out. It was just, then you'd come home 300 miles from Jonesboro back to Hendersonville. That's where we all lived. So we'd drive that 300-mile trip. Sometimes you was off Sunday. Sometimes you'd be in Jackson, Tennessee. Sometimes you'd be in a spot show. But yeah, you was off as many times as you worked. But it just depends. So then Monday here, you'd come, you'd hold your breath till you go down there, see what you did, bring it right Monday. Usually it was worked. So then whatever you had done the week before was in Louisville that week. So you're a week behind on the tape. So when you go to Louisville the next day, Tuesday, you're doing what you did off the week before, Saturday. So you're a week behind on your program. So you had to, but you knew it was going to work. So if it worked in Memphis, you knew you was going to sell out Louisville and Evansville and up in Kentucky, because that's how it worked. So then in Evansville, we'd go Wednesday to Evansville. Thursday would be a spot show. Tupelo would be Friday. Stay over in Tupelo, drive into Memphis as fast as you could. The reason they run Tupelo, they said, so we could all get a good night's sleep. Nobody went to bed. We'd go right from the bar to the TV, and well, Lawler go to bed. He never drank, but most of us, the wilder ones, and I sometimes straight from the damn bar took the first bump. You look at them lights, going wow, wow. You think, oh my God, I'm never doing this again. But that was a lie. You did it the next Friday.
Speaking of Monday nights, Mid-South Coliseum, everybody knows the history there with the huge crowd selling out every week. Excuse me. What was that like to work in front of those huge crowds down there in Memphis?
It was. I believe Memphis is the best wrestling town there was. I mean, it was, and they wanted to believe, and we did what they wanted. You worked like it was a shoot. I mean, it's just all different. And when the carrot dropped off, you did something wrong, or somebody did a bad angle, or missed them with a chair, and you showed it on TV. So they were pretty knowledgeable of what they wanted to see, and what they wanted to see was a fight and believe it. So if you did that on Saturday morning, you was pretty well getting a good house on Monday.
Can you talk about the rat or the groupie scene in Memphis? What was that like? Because it's pretty notorious.
Well, never really got, I'm going to put it, the Fabs was really Stan and Steve and Ricky and Robert when the Rock and Roll Express and the Fabulous Ones, them gimmicks were put together. Now they were all there as different people, like Ricky and Robert were around and Stan and Steve were around, but them gimmicks clicked. So you had the rock and roll for the, you know, the teeny bopper type or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Then you had Stan and Steve who looked like men, who were mature men for the mature women liked them. And you're right, brother. It was, well, it wasn't just Memphis. It was
All the towns.
all the towns. I mean, them 4 guys got over. You know, so it was just like, Bill Dundee was kind of cute back then too. But so anyway, yeah, it was pretty notorious. But see, Friday night was when it was the most notorious, or Thursday. If you came in early on Thursday and you did a Arkansas town, you would stay there Thursday night, Friday night, because you'd drive to Tupelo, drive back, so you'd be in town 2 nights. You'd terrorize them bars and carry on. I never bought a drink in Memphis. When I go to the bar, they never made you stand in line. They brought you to the head of the crowd. It was, hey, there's the Dundee or whoever was. You know, they knew who we all was. The big line going into the bar. They'd take you around. Somebody'd buy you your first beer, and you never was, you know. But it had its perks, I guess.
Right. As far as Ricky and Robert, you talked about them real briefly. Were you there when Jerry gave him the gimmick?
Yeah, sure was. Robert wasn't going to put it on.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
He said, I'm not wearing that. I said, come on, man, that's what the dude said, I'm not wearing it. He said, I'm a wrestler, not a singer. Anyway, finally talked him into doing it. The rest is history.
Were you shocked how well it got over?
Well, no, not really, because they looked like what they were. I mean, you know, if you remember back that era, the singers all looked like long-haired, blonde-headed guys, and they were about the same size, cute, and the girls thought they were cute, and they put the bandanas on and all that fancy, you know, the frills and whatever. Looked like rock and roll singers, so they'd got over.
As far as Jerry Jarrett, he was pretty innovative with his TV at the time. He was probably the first person to ever do a vignette. I think the Hogan one might have been his first vignette ever.
Well, no, Lawler's was the first one. He did the one with Hogan, just the bodybuilding pose things. Lawler did the one where Lawler sung Bad News, that Johnny Cash song, Bad News Travels Like Wildfire, and he actually sang it, and they do the video where he's running down, and they do that. But that was really the first one.
Talk about all our early vignettes, I guess, that pretty much helped.
Well, this is what Jarrett was good at, and this is where they've lost the handle on the axis thing. You can't take Handsome Jimmy and make him Joe LeDuc. You have to keep him Handsome Jimmy. You can't take Dusty Rhodes and make him the Rock and Roll Express. Jarrett was very good at picking, and Lawler, and I guess we was the office, Lawler, and Jarrett, and Dundee, at picking the guy, say, hey, this would work on you if we did it. They were very good at picking that, and that's how it worked. You know, when they took Sugar Bear Harris and made him Kamala, that was Lawler. You know, he said, do the deal on him and all that thing, and it worked. They had a knack for picking the talent to do the gimmick they wanted done.
Didn't they shoot that video behind Jarrett's house in
the
woods right there?
Sure did, in a pond, me and them. When the smoke's coming up like it's in the jungle, that's me walking backwards, dropping dry ice into the water, steam coming up, and Kamala going booga booga. Booga, booga.
When Hogan was in the territory, he didn't last very long. Was that because he went to Vern pretty quickly?
Well, yeah, I think that was basically, and I never really, was just boom, boom, and gone.
Right.
You know, so I really, we shot well, he wasn't, his brother was what's his name?
Beefcake.
Beefcake, but yeah, but no, he came in and he said he was Hulk's brother, and we shot an angle with him and brought the Hogan in. Hogan got over. He came in twice before that. He never really got over, but when he changed his name to Hulk Hogan, he came back as Hulk Hogan. He got over on that third appearance, but we'd done the angle with the 2 heels, beat his brother up, and he came in to save the day. And you're right, and I really don't remember him ever really leaving. It was just like he was there, and then he was gone. He was at Vern, so I guess he got the deal there. Then he left there, and he went to Vince, and the rest is history there, as they say.
What are your thoughts about Phil Hickerson?
Oh, I love Phil. I would have done a lot of trips with Phil. He's a good guy. He's a DJ, and he had the radio show talking in the mornings in Jackson. He's still around, and you know. He was, for a big 300-pound guy, take bumps out the yin-yang. He was a good worker, and him and Dennis Conde got over. That was the first time you could say Dennis broke out of the mold. Him and Hickerson were together.
Right.
So Dennis, you know, they were both good. And they were what we were, but they were Southern boys talking to the Southern people, and they understood, you know, how they talked.
Speaking of promos and stuff like that, Saturday mornings you guys had TV, and one thing great about Memphis was the angles and the promos and stuff like that. I think it really helped. I mean, the matches on TV were pretty much, you know, squashes, and they did angles and stuff like that. But talk about, as far as when you went to TV, how much of the promos were scripted, and did you guys have time cues and stuff like that, or did you just go out there, feel the crowd?
Just went at what you said. You got the points. You have to get the point in. I mean,
right.
you can't just, even Handsome Jimmy, when Boogie came to town, he never said nothing except the points, and that was his interview. He rambled on about, you know, doing 6 gainers off the bridge at Alcatraz and swimming 6 miles and eating 6 T-bone steaks, and he would talk like that, but he would get the point in what he was saying about Lawler or me or whoever he was talking about, and that was really what they gave you, the point of the interview. and you could say it anyhow you like.
In your opinion, why do you feel like Memphis was one territory that produced some of the best promos into the, up to today?
The guys took the time to teach him how to do it. Jerry Jarrett was a pretty good teacher. I mean, he'd give you the thing, and I mean, even when Lawler started, Lawler was always a good talker, but Jarrett would tell him, "No, Jerry, say this in your own words." He would actually give you the interviewer, the points, like I said, but he would never make you say it the way he said it. He would just give, and you were allowed to do it your way, as long as you got the point in it he wanted. And somebody was teaching you. It's like the business today. If nobody teaches you how to wrestle, you don't know how.
A lot of the business today, though, the promos are all the same pretty much.
Well, I'm afraid the boys all look the same. They all have great bodies. They're all good athletes in their own right, but it has nothing to do with what we did. There's no psycho. All wrestling was, my opinion in the good old days was, I make a motion and the crowd reacts. I say something and the crowd reacts. They react and I do something. And that was how it worked. It's a chess game. It didn't matter whether we knew who was going to win. They didn't, but they know now. I saw one of the best interviews out of, I guess you could say, covering that subject with Archie Bunker. Remember Archie Bunker's show? So he was sitting there, and it was one of the big blonde guy was his buddy comes in, and Archie's watching wrestling. So he says, "Archie, you ain't watching that wrestling, are you?" He said, "Yeah, I'm watching wrestling." He said, "They both know who's going to win." And old Archie looked up at him and he said, "Yeah, maybe they do, but I don't. See the difference? Now they just come out on TV shows and tell you it's a work, but back then they kind of protected it. That was really,
The magic's lost.
And it was true. Nobody, you didn't know. Now, the squash job you talked about, that's how it was. We weren't going to give you Lawler against Dundee on Memphis television and expect you to buy a ticket to see him on Monday night.
Right.
We both went out and squashed somebody and came out and told them how great we was and we're going to do what with one another, and that's how it worked. And that wasn't just in Memphis. That was in Florida with Dusty, and Flair was over in Charlotte. They all were done on the same principle.
Right, right. I guess, what were the payoffs like in Memphis? A lot of the guys, Memphis was horrible. I had to leave after 2 weeks because, the pay was horrible.
Well, that's not really, maybe in the end, but that really wasn't true way back in the good old days. Now, Nick had a worse, see, there was two ends. When Jarrett split away from Nick Goulas, Nick's end was Birmingham and Huntsville and on that deal, and Jarrett had Memphis, Louisville, Evansville, Lexington, Kentucky, Tupelo, and Jonesboro, and the spot shows around. The payoff, I mean, nobody left. The payoffs were good, but it was just, in today's standard, we're all horrible. I mean, and the promoters they told you got 32% of the house split between the boys, but I never ever figured that they did. It was more like 28%, but it's just how it was.
I was going to ask you about that, if you guys all felt that it was legit or you couldn't tell.
Yeah, they never really cared. I mean, way back when somebody, back in the early 70s, if a man was working hard all week and he got $200 a week or $250, that was a lot of money. If you was making $700 to $1,500, you thought you was a millionaire. He was on top or whatever he was doing, and you would go to Memphis. The guys underneath would make $600-700 a week. That wasn't bad money.
Right.
And a lot of girls and a lot of free time.
Right, right. Talk about when Andre came into the territory. What was that like?
He only one or two times. See, we were all itty bitty fellas compared to, we didn't have a giant killer. I mean, Lawler was the top heel for years, and I was the baby face. So I mean, Andre never really, he'd come in as Lawler beat him one time. Did you ever hear the story of that deal when he put on? He said it was sitting in Evansville, and he said, "What do I do, boss?" So Lawler was just kind of joking. He said, "I'd like to beat you." He said, "Okay." So they did.
Wow.
Worked it out. But 30 guys run in and got him down, but Lawler crawled on top, and the referee went 1, 2, 3. True story. And brother, they had a meeting at the NWA about Lawler beating a midget beating the champion. Andre was a funny guy. I mean, he liked to drink his wine and do things, but he thought it was funny too. We're in Evansville, Indiana. I mean, it was a good house, sold out, but it wasn't Madison Square Garden. But brother, did the head honchos and like Vince's dad and all them get hot. But anyway, they had a big meeting about it, and that was the last time he put anybody over, except when they did the Hulk thing. But Lawler just said it as a joke. He didn't expect the guy to say yeah.
Wow. Good story. I guess, what do you remember about your first feud with Jerry in '75? What was the premise for it?
Well, it was a natural one as far as it really had no premise. The people knew it was building because, every week I'd go out and do my thing and he'd do his thing, and the people liked me and they liked him, and, so it had to happen. There was no other way for it to not happen. So there really wasn't an angle shot. It was just it just happened. They said, "Well, just book Lawler again." "Well, let's just see how bad you are." And we never shot no angle. We just talked to things. Well, the people would like to know, and I'd like to know. And then Lawler said the same to me. "Well, I don't think you're that tough." I said, "Okay, there's only one way to find out. We're both babyface."
Right.
So it was what we did in the finish that made it go on in the heel direction.
Who turned?
He did the first time.
Okay.
And we did another deal when him and I were tag team partners, and we won Tag Team of the Year at the convention, and I won Wrestler of the Year, and he stormed out and slammed the door and threw it, and he switched again. I said, then the next week he came out, he said, why would you give that midget that damn trophy? I'm right, you know, blah, 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 and off we went again, just over a trophy. See, they were all legit things that we did. I mean, people would fall out over a trophy, you know. If you think you're the better wrestler and I get the trophy, or I don't know if them movie stars fight over them Oscars at the backstage or not, but you could shoot a hell of an angle with one of them, you know what I mean? It's just, so that, you know, we did legit kind of stuff that fitted.
I guess at the time, maybe it was later on, maybe early 80s, maybe late 70s, I'm not sure. What was the rivalry like between the company of Memphis and the Poffos?
Well, pretty bad. Me and Randy got in a fight in the parking lot. I wouldn't say it was a fight. I was sitting talking to Thunderbolt Patterson. Randy came out of nowhere and sucker punched me. So I went, bam, hit me. I said, what the hell? So I turned around, there's Randy. I said, you mother... So anyway, me and him roll around. So the fight, it kind of stopped. So Angelo was there, Pez Watley was there. Pez never really did nothing, Thunderbolt Patterson, and Randy. So the Cadillac was coming at the gym. So they sat in a van and waited for me to come out of the gym. So after Randy sucker punching me, my eyes all bleeding. I said, well, if I go with this car open, I'll restore order. So he realizes what I was doing. He said, he's got a gun in that car. I said, you're damn right I got a gun in the car. So I go around the trunk and open the trunk. As the trunk opens, the gun was laying inside the holster, and I had to knock the thing to keep the hammer back, knock it off with one hand. So as I knocked it off, he jumped up on my back. Randy did, and his father was standing off to the right. So as Randy jumped on my back, Angelo pulled my hand, and as he did, the gun came out of the holster. I cocked it. I said, get your son off my back or I'll blow your brains out right now. So Randy went, oh, the fight's over. It's over, Bill. It's over. It's over. And I said, you're fucking right, it's over. So anyway, by the time I got home, the police is at my door. I just went home. So they have me charged with assault with a deadly weapon. I said, assault with a deadly weapon. I said, look at my eye, man. I go to the hospital, it cost $3,000 to fix it. He'd hit, well, I don't know what, he had a ring on or something, but this bone switched places, and it had just flipped on over. So he goes on their television and says that he's going to fight with Bill Dundee in the parking lot, and he had broke my jaw and beat me up. And I said, well, you couldn't really tell it because they just took a thing and cut it, and they flicked the bone back, but there was no, so I went back on the next week's TV, and I said, now you may have heard some idiot out on their TV telling you that they broke my jaw. Does my jaw look like it's broke? So that fight, it kind of helped us more than it did Randy. He really thought it would do something for his TV and all the other things. So anyway, we go to court. So we go to court. Randy shows up. Lenny was there. Angelo was there. Their lawyer's there. Me, my lawyer, and Eddie Marlin's there. And Saul Weingroff, who used to be the manager, he's one of the jailers there. So he comes up to me. He says, Bill, we need to go Broadway with this thing. I said, go Broadway? I said, he punched me. I never said a goddamn thing to him. He said, I know that. He said, we need to calm this thing down, man. Well, he'd go into 2 fights and all arrested in 2 or 3 times. Randy was wild back in them days. There's a lot of chemical things, I guess, help him, but that's beside the point. So I said, well, okay, we'll go Broadway. So we just went, lawyers went up, approached the bench, and I dropped the charges, they dropped the charges, and we left. So I hadn't seen Randy for a long time. So anyway, he end up come to Memphis. So that was kind of slap in the face to me, I thought, but you know, money's money, and Jarrett's all about money. So I went off to work for Watts, then I'd come back and you know, other things. So Randy was in the hall, and he's walking down the hall. When he sees me coming, he's walking up, so he turns with his back and he puts it against the wall. You know, he's standing with his back against the wall. So I walked up to him, and I said, there's no sense keeping this thing going. I said, Randy, I'm not going to do nothing to you, because I threatened him with that. I said, I've took your best shot, but you ain't got mine. You know, we did all that way back on 2 years before that. So I said, there's no sense keeping this thing going. So we shook hands on that, and we kind of civil to one another when we see one another. So. But my boy, Jamie, went to see him at a show one time, and he said, Randy, tell me the story about you and my dad having a fight. And he says, oh, kid, you know how he talks. Oh, he did the gimmick. Oh, heavy drugs then, kid. Oh, don't mention it. Oh, do. So Jamie would take him off doing that. So that's kind of how he broke the ice with Jamie.
That's great. What are your thoughts on Nick Gulas?
Well, that's who brought me here as far as getting him, and it was Nick Gulas, Roy Welsh, and Jarrett was the booker. So, I mean, to me, I like him for that part. You know, I mean, it was. You know, but as far as now the payoffs and what you're talking about, Memphis got the bad name. Nick was a kind of that way. You'd come in a Cadillac and leave on the Greyhound buses. They would say, or you know, but it was just a different George, his boy, was involved, and you know, yeah, Nick was like what people thought promoters were back then. He was all for Nick, but I never really worked for him. I quit on him one time. Jarrett, we'd shot. Well, in fact, we just shot the angle. We go switch me babyface. So Nick, what the hell did I get into the argument about? May have been a payoff. I don't remember. But anyway, I went to the office. Me and Nick get nose to nose. He said, "Well, goddamn boy, I'm the boss." I said, "Well, not really mine. I work for Jerry Jarrett." He said, "Well, he works for me." I said, "Well, I really don't give a damn. I quit." So I went outside and sat down. The cars were waiting on Jerry to come. So Jerry comes up and he said, "What are you doing, man?" I said, "It's been nice working for you. I'll see you." He said, "Where are you going?" I said, "We just shot the angle." Now, this is how the kind of guy Nick was that Jarrett could get into his head or whatever. So he lays the angle out to me in the parking lot. And he says, "Now you go back in there and let Nick tell you this like it's his deal." So I said, "Well, damn." I go back, and so anyway, I go back in the Paul. I said, "Nick, I was a little hot-headed. I'm sorry," and da-da-da. So Nick said, "Well, God damn it, boys." He said, "Well, you come back. So I got a great deal for you. We go switch you." He called him clean. He didn't call him babyface. He said, "Go switch you clean." But I'd already known. Jarrett already told me things. So Jerry let Nick tell me, and that broke down our back, so we got right back. But I never really worked for Nick. I worked, like I said, on Jarrett's end.
What about Tommy Rich? What are your early memories of Tommy when he came to the company?
Oh, hell, he was 18 years old driving an Eldorado Cadillac. I mean, me and him run around a lot together.
Did you see the potential in him?
Oh yeah, I mean, right from the very beginning, he was. You know, everybody tried to have a Tommy Rich when he went to Atlanta. He was as hot as Hogan was before Hogan got hot. I mean, but nobody really realized it. See, the good thing about when Vince realized what he was doing and got everybody over, he had the merchandise and all that stuff in his head. I mean, he knew the direction he was going. We were just running around getting over with people and never knew.
Right, right.
We didn't really know how big a star. Well, you kind of know because they let you in nightclubs free and they'd give you free views and all that kind of thing. Oh, this is great. But we never really cashed in on the potential.
Do you think the stories are true about Tommy Rich and Jim Barnett and the title and stuff like that?
Nah.
No, just, okay. What are your thoughts on Bruiser Brody?
In fact, I know they ain't true. That's bogus.
Just
I mean,
stupid.
yeah, people. Well, Barnett. I worked for Barnett for 12 years in Australia, and he would say, "Dundee, my boy." He said, "You know, this is how he was." I mean, he liked being around good-looking guys. Guys that like Barnett are just like us being around good-looking women. I mean, you know, he had a guy. When he first came in '76, his name was Lonnie, and he was the accountant. You know, he was just like Jim, and he'd take you out to dinner just so he could be. I'd go. It didn't bother me none. I got free dinner. I was a kid trying to get in the wrestling business, you know.
Right.
Now, would you like to go eat, my boy? Yeah, hell yeah. And you sit there, and that's their mind thought.
Right, right.
But that thing with Tommy, that's just a bullshit story.
What about early memories of Bruiser Brody?
I never was around Frank much. He came to Memphis one time. He worked. Him and Lawler had a little single program, and we went to the tag match, and him and what the hell was his name now? Can't think of it. I don't know who the hell I was teamed up with. But anyway, I went to Frank. I said, "No, Frank, look at the size difference. You could throw me around like a ping pong ball, but if you don't sell, it ain't going to mean nothing." He said, "No problem, Bill." And he didn't flip-flop all over the place, don't get me wrong, but for Frank to drop to a knee and let you punch him in the chin, that's pretty damn good. So I was happy with it.
What are your memories of Rocky Johnson, The Rock?
I loved Rocky. Me and him was buddies. We were a tag team. We run up and down the road. And The Rock Dewey was just a little bitty fella, and he'd come to my house, and we'd run around together. And he was there 2 years, 3 years, with tag team champions. So I mean, me and Rocky had a lot of good times together.
How about Plowboy Frazier, who later on became Uncle Albert?
Another good old boy. Lawler brought him in as a heel, and they got over first day in. And Frazier was what you saw is what you got. I mean, he'd bring the watermelon out and eat the watermelon. It was all because, the black thing was very subtle how he did it, but that's what it was about, the blacks and how the baby pacifiers, he'd call them, eat the watermelon and all that shit. But you know what he was talking about.
Right. What about Dirty Dutch Mantel? Another guy.
Dutchman. That word explains him, Dirty Dutch. Dutch was all right. I never really had the only fight I ever had in my life with the wrestler was, like I told you, Randy. I kind of got along with everybody, but back then you had to get along because you had to eat. And it's not like today they get them big contracts. I mean, if you don't like me and I don't like you and we're both making $500,000 a year, who really cares? But if we didn't sell out Memphis or Louisville or Tupelo or wherever we went, payoffs were a way off. So you got along, whether you liked them or not. You didn't ride with them, but you got along, and I got along with Dutch, I mean.
What about Ernie Ladd? What are your memories of Ernie?
Well, I took the booker's job from Ernie in Louisville. He was the booker, and I mean, in Louisiana, and Bill come and hired me, and then Ernie was there, and I got along good with Ernie. You could not like him. He was a very likable guy, you know. So, but his knees was gone then. And they say when he was young, he was a little different, kind of like Luthez and all them. As they get older, you know, they said Ernie was a bad ass when he was football player.
What happened in, I guess it was May and July of '77 that changed the booking from Gulas to Jarrett? What was the fallout they had?
They never switched the stock in the company that Jerry bought. He bought the thing, and then they were going to send George to Memphis. And Jerry said, no, he ain't. He said, you know, he's not coming to Memphis. See, Memphis was protected very good because it was the town that fed everybody. You know, I mean, that was the thing. If you couldn't work back in the early 70s, you couldn't do a job on Memphis TV. They didn't just take some Yahoo off the street. They had other guys that were like wrestlers that all lived around there. It was middle of the card dudes, and they put you over. And if you couldn't carry that strap, you couldn't get a job. It wasn't just like today. They just put tights on and say, I'm a wrestler. So when he says that to Nick, you know, well, I'm not doing that yet. And he said, well, I'm the damn boss. He said, no, he said, I own half this company. He said, no, you don't. Then he went and checked. He hadn't switched the stock. So anyway, they ended up taking Memphis, and that's when Lawler went, and he got a third of the town, and Buddy Fuller, and Nick stayed in Birmingham. And this was, well, it wasn't really a surprise to everybody when you get to know Jerry, I guess. Tojo and Fargo stayed with Nick. They didn't go with Jerry, and they were the, you know, big shots when we got here. So, but it was all over that stock.
How bad was that feud?
Never really was a feud as far as they just did their end, we did our end. Now, what Nick and them did in the paperwork, I don't know. We never really, but no, as far as the boys, if you met guys that worked for him, you were civil to one another, talk to one another.
Now, I think you and Lawler main evented his first show, correct? I guess when...
on that...
after the switch.
Yeah.
What are your memories of the match in '77 also? I think it was when your wife got her head shaved.
But the head cutting, that was all that deal. Yeah, that was all just... How did I talk her into that? But anyway, they did mine, and we did hers the next week.
Did you actually approach her for that money?
Well, but kind of, yeah. More, that's basically what it was. I mean, you got paid for, you know, that was what it was. And, you know, we'd just been here a short time. We were wanting to buy a house, and I'd done mine the week before for a big chunk of change. And I said, you get the same amount, and we'll go buy this house tomorrow.
Wow.
So that was the kind of what, you know, put the down payment on it and money. But the guy was scared to cut her hair. I mean, when she left the ring, it was maybe this, you know, kind of hair. It was bat like yours. I mean, they kept unplugging the shears at the back, and see, they really thought I was going to beat Lawler. That's really how the heat came as far as what it was. Even the newspaper reporters were there, and they thought they're not going to let this woman get her head shaved. They really thought they knew the angle. Well, it was 1, 2, 3 on old Bill here. A whole different ball game, brother.
Did it bother you at all when Harley would come in and he would always get to work Lawler, and you never really got a shot at Harley?
No, because like I said, I knew that
you knew your deal.
What the deal was. And then here was the other deal that I never, when the champion came in and you worked with him, he either beat you or you did a DQ or you did this or that. Most of the time you get his hand raised, you know what I'm saying? Or sometimes Jarrett would talk him into a fluke finish to kind of look like Lawler won. But when the champion came in, you did the G-job, and so I didn't really care. I would be on, you know.
I guess let's talk about Wayne Ferris and the famous Tupelo concession brawl.
That was, how would you say that was? They've tried to duplicate that 100 times. It can't be done because that wasn't planned to be done. We wrestled for the belts, and they had Lance, and the cameraman was up top, and we'd shut the show down. The show was over, and they said, okay, good night, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. Bam, bam, bam. So we and Lawler had won the belts and went back to the dressing room. So Jerry Jarrett is standing in the hall. Well, this is how angles just develop. We kind of knew we was going to do something, but we didn't know what we was going to do. So Jarrett's standing there, and Wayne and Danny Davis and Larry Latham, who was the Blonde Bombers, come, hey, they stole our belts, yeah, and they go on him and they start pulling on his clothes and they rip his shirt. When we got back at it, he was down to his damn near, well, he was down to his underwear, and they were trying to rip that off. So Lance says on the black to the TV, Mike, come on down here, there's a hell of a fight going on. So they come down, and the camera flashes around like they turned it back on, which was true. They were coming down the stairs. I mean, this was all stuff that happened to get down there, but they just left it on the tape.
Right.
So me and Lawler come back out the dressing room, and they have Jarrett down, beating him up, and blah, blah, blah. So one of them just jumped over the counter. And when they jumped over the counter, Lawler and me or somebody jumped over behind him. Now we're in the concession stand. So somebody picks up, probably Lawler, because he was the one with the most stripes. So he picks up the jar of pickles and throws it. So it breaks. So, oh, this is great. So the people that owned the concession stand, they're trying to save the concession stand. So as we're fighting, you can watch on the tape, they're running, picking up stuff and running to the back and putting it away. We're hitting, throwing candy and all kinds of things. So, and then the camera just picks back up and here's this big brawl going on and people trying to save the candy. And we sold that for a year with that after that. But it was just one of them things that happened and we just kept it going.
Do you think you guys were pretty much the pioneers of hardcore?
Oh, but we never knew what it was. I mean, as far as what they do today, I mean, they call it hardcore, but this is my interpretation of it, and I told this to Cactus Jack, so it's no secret of what I told him. I said, Jack, you're just a fat guy that takes a lot of bumps, man. You can't wrestle. He said, I know, Bill, and that's what I got to do to get over. So, I mean, he knew that 100 years ago. I said, Jack, you're going to kill yourself, man. That was when he was Cactus Jack, made $1 million or two up at Vince doing all the crazy stuff. But he did that, well, you saw his tape when he started. Right. So I used to just call it Fat Man Can't Wrestle match. You know, I never cared for him. I never cared for him as hardcore. It doesn't mean a damn thing to nobody. Once you've seen one, you've seen them all, and it still doesn't top that Tupelo thing.
What about Wayne Ferris? Why do you feel that him and Jerry have so much heat to this day?
I know they're cousins, man. That goes way back to a family thing, and it's just, well, Lawler and Carl Fergie's Lawler's cousin, and you know, and when they both got into business, Lawler never really did nothing to kind of help any of them. I think Wayne may resent that a little bit that he was the king of Memphis, and you know, so I really don't know why the heat's there, but it's there.
What are your memories of Iron Sheik when he came into the territory?
Oh, Sheiky baby. He was another funny guy. I mean, they were all characters, and you know, and it was hard not to like him. I mean, you know, he would screw up things and you know do the thing, but he just how he hey baby, and he'd twist that thing. He was just a funny guy. I mean, I got along good with him.
What are your memories of your series with Joe LeDuc?
Well, when it first started, it was kind of hard because Joe didn't really want to sell. You know, and I said, Joe, we can't go on like this, man. You don't say. I mean, you know, at least fall down. And but that's how they had him working. I mean, you know, they wanted him a monster. Well, Jarrett told him that when he came in, Joe, just be a big, mean monster, don't sell. But he didn't mean me and Lawler. But Joe had it in his head. They didn't want it. So, well, it's me you're working for, and we're building for Lawler, and we're going to do this. You have to sell. If I can't knock you on your ass, just well, I'll go home. So once you kind of realized that we was in a program and what we was doing, it was a lot easier. But when he first started, brother, the first couple of weeks was
hard to work with.
It was me selling and Joe pounding.
Whose idea was it for all the vignettes with the axe and all that stuff?
Well, kind of Joe's. I mean, he just got crazier and crazier on some of the stuff that he did. He did the axe thing, and he did he bashed the glass on his head, and he would do, I'm not crazy, you know, he'd do that gimmick. So, and he would do things to make you think he was, you know.
What was the take on the locker room? What did the boys think of him?
With the axe deal?
With the axe thing and stuff like that.
Oh, it was, you know, you just knew Joe, you know. When he said he was going to do it, I mean, I thought, nah, he ain't going to do it. And he did.
Did you guys ever get in trouble for anything you guys put on TV live? Like
no.
That kind of stuff? That's
the chainsaw, when we had Tex Schlesinger as the chainsaw guy.
Right.
We had a real chainsaw the first day. And he was waving it around, and the TV guy came out and said, bro, you can't, you know, if that saw touches one of them cables, we'll all be up in smoke. No, it wasn't into trouble, it was just take the chain off the saw or whatever, you know.
Another legend to come out of Memphis territory was Austin Idol. What are your memories of Austin?
I first met him in Australia as Mike McCord. He was a power lifter, he weighed 280, and he was just a fair worker. Like I said, about 280, just, you know, so you know, Barnett brought him over there, and he never really got over. He's just a big old strong guy. Then we came back. I hadn't seen him in 100 years. You know, like it seemed like 10 years from the time I met him in Australia. This picture come to the office and the tape. Austin Idol, whole different guy, and a whole different attitude. I mean, if he didn't like it, he didn't do it.
A lot of people say
he was a prick, actually.
Right. A lot of people say it was very, very hard to work with.
Oh, very hard to work with. And couldn't beat time with a stick. That was the bad thing about him, and not the best worker in the world. He had a good look about him. He could talk. Now he could talk, but his work sucked. Right. You know, he wasn't. But if he didn't like what he thought was supposed to be the finale, get on the plane, go home.
How many times?
And that's bad for business, huh?
I was going to ask you, how many times do you think he actually walked out of the territory and came back?
Well, he never actually. The only time he ever actually walked out, he didn't. See, we was a week behind in Louisville, and we'd give him the finish where he asked what was going to, because you had to make the interview. So we were going to do the ether deal. And he did the interview. This is the reason I never, from this, I didn't, because I was booked it, you know. And then he should have just said, Bill, I don't want to do this ether thing, can we do something else? But he shot the interview like we did it. And then he told somebody when he did the interview, he said, yeah, I may be going to sleep tonight, or it'll be in my own bed. You see what I mean? So he just got on the plane and went home. But we had already had the interview in the can, and it never happened, because it was supposed to happen, you know, like in Louisville the week. So that was bad. And he was going to do it to Robert Fuller when Robert Fuller was booking Memphis, and Buzz Sawyer was still around then. You all know Buzz Sawyer? Would you all remember Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer?
Yeah.
Place was pretty well packed, and he told Robert he wanted more money, and Robert said, no, you agreed on this, and this. It was bad, it damn near sold out. He said, and if I don't get it, I'm going to walk right through them people down there and go out the back door. He said, before you get to the ring, I guarantee you Buzz Sawyer will break your leg. And he never walked.
Wow.
He was a coward. He just, you know, he didn't want the confrontation. So he never even went out the back door, and he certainly wasn't going to walk through the people. They went and did their deal and never came back for a while.
You ever hear the story about the Battle Royal, where he got the check for the
Oh, the whole deal, that was way back before we got, I don't know if that's really a true story or not, but they say it is. So.
Right.
But I know I'd love it, had the real name on it, he would have cashed it, so I'm sure it was.
What are your memories of some of your 60-minute matches with Jerry Lawler back in the day?
Well, see, they were real easy with Lawler. I mean, Lawler is a great worker. He can make a broom look good. So they weren't hard, and that's why you called it, what we did, high spots. I mean, you would wrestle a little bit, you'd put a hold on, you'd sit in it, you know, just like Ricky Steamboat and Ric Flair, same thing. Then you'd do a high spot, get the people up, then you go back to a hold. So it's not just one continuous 60-minute bang, bang, bang. They're hard to do. I mean, me and Lawler went 3 hours, almost 3 hours in a match in Jackson Coliseum with Joe LeDuc and Jean-Louis in a tag match. We went to the ring at 10 after 9, they rung the bell at midnight with curfew. You know, and got juice 100 times, and just, you know, people stayed. Coliseum was full when we started and full when we finished, so they must have been into it. Now that's a long time, my friend. Almost 3-hour match.
That is pretty long. Was there ever a time where Jerry Jarrett maybe told you to leave the territory for a little while because you were getting stale at all?
Well, it wasn't really stale. He thought me and Lawler was really getting too mad, or not mad, or just, you know how it is, the bickering and whatever it was. And so Bill Watts was looking for a booker, so he really suggested me to Watts. But that wasn't the story that he told me, but that's really what it was. I mean, it wasn't the stale part. He just didn't want the fight to happen, which maybe because we'd both been around me. I don't think it would have came. It was just sometimes Jerry read things that wasn't there, you know. So he said, Bill Watts is looking for a booker, so he came up and talked to me, and I went to Louisiana.
I'm going to talk about that coming up. As far as you being a worker, I mean, at what point did you realize, you know, you're pretty good at booking finishes and stuff like that? At what point in your career?
Well, like I said, I grew up around Mark Lou, and I always thought I was pretty good at it. And it was funny, when I went to Jarrett, and when he hired Lawler the first time to book me and him, I went to him and said, hey, you hired the wrong guy. You know, and he said, what you talking about? He said, you just got it. I said, I don't care, I'm the better booker. You know, and I was just, you know, a little whiskey in me, but that's beside the point. You know? So, I mean, I always thought I could do it.
How soon did he give you the pencil, basically?
Oh, I know, 77 maybe as far as thinking, but he never, when I say, he still kept it, you know, like the range. I mean, he wouldn't let you get too far out, you know what I'm saying? So if you thought something was too wild, he'd ask you what your next deal was. So, I mean, you know, you didn't do the thing, and he was kind of there, you know.
Watch him. Did you guys pretty much have control over your programs?
Yeah.
Creative control?
As far as just what you, I mean, me and Lawler sometimes wouldn't say nothing except the finish. You know, who was going over, and then sometimes you went to the ring and didn't know how. You know, but you worked so often, and we both knew one another so good. You
knew it was going to work.
You knew whatever you did was going to work. You know, just.
What are some of your memories with your series with Paul Ellering?
Paul, he was another good. I mean, like I said, I never like we all had to get along. So as far, he was a big, strong old boy. He was strong. You know, and he was built like the Road Warriors before then. You know, before he ever got managing them. Me and Paul had some good matches. It's David Goliath deal. I mean, and Paul would sell. I mean, you know, and he was a big, strong old boy. But he knew if you babyface can't knock you on your ass, there's no coming back next week.
Right. What did you think when you found out that Bob Eaton was dating your daughter? And were you mad about it at all, or?
That was 2 years after it all started. I mean, no, Bobby's such a nice guy. You can't get mad. I mean, you know, you've been around him. You know how he is. How can you get mad at Bobby?
Huh.
You know, and I kind of got mad at Donna for not telling me because it just made me look a little stupid during the dressing room every night together, you know. So, you know, I never really got mad at anybody, but I said, Donna, you should have told me. I mean, you know, how does it make me look front of all them guys? Not that I, you know, you're old enough to be dating who you want, but...
Right. What about Onita when he came into the territory? What are your memories of Onita?
And Fuji, they were a very good team. I mean, they were, you know, when we worked against them, me and the Dream Machine worked against them. That was Troy Graham when we did the Dream Machine gimmick, and they were young. But see, they were all sent here to learn American style of wrestling, and they were easy to get along with. You know, they were here to make money and prove, I guess, to the Japanese head honchos that they could do American style. So they listened to you. I got along good with all them boys, and Tojo managed them. So anything you had to say to them, he'd talk to them in Japanese. You know, so if they weren't too good English, so you could still communicate.
Right. Eddie Gilbert and Tommy Gilbert. Actually, Tommy first. What are your memories of Tommy?
Well, Tommy and Eddie were the tag team champions when we got here, and Tommy kind of retired after that. And I never really was around Eddie much at all. I mean, he was always gone somewhere else. I mean, I never, you know, he came back and he booked for a little while. And, you know, I always got along all right with him.
Did you know Doug at all?
Yeah, me and Doug still talk and go to shows together, and you know, around. He lives in Lexington. I used to live in Lexington too.
Nick Bockwinkel. He came into the
Oh, Nick,
territory.
I loved working with Nick. He was the champion for the AWA. It was night off when you work with Nick. We did a finish, and this is a true story. We did a finish, and if you did it today, they would think we're all crazy. But anyway, me and Nick wrestled about 45 minutes. Never threw one punch. And at the end of the match, we just backed him into the ropes, and I put my hands up. The babyface took a step back, and he nailed me. Boom, down I went, covered me. 1, 2, 3. I thought they were going to riot because they were into the wrestling. People will buy wrestling if you give it to them.
What is your fondest? Go ahead.
And that was the finale. I mean, that was it. One punch. And the place just, boom, and they were all, you son of a bitch, you punch, yeah, yeah. See, and that's what the people don't realize today. They don't really cheat. If you kick a guy or punch him, they don't yell out, referee, punched him. Pull his hair and see what they yell out. Because they all know that's cheating. Pull his tights, they'll yell out, referee, took him down by the tights. But if you punch him or kick him or pile drive him, they don't say shit. They don't say nothing. And if the boys would just slow down and learn that today, you could get it back to square one. But that thing called the clicker, it gets boring to the people sitting home, so they want to try to keep it going, and you can't.
We're going to talk about all that coming up. Definitely.
Okay.
I'm going to get your opinion on that. As far as Memphis, what was your fondest memories of Memphis?
I guess when you just go there and, you know, the people liked me, and, you know, especially when I switched babyface, I didn't really realize the response would be so good. But everywhere you went, you know, they'd come up and talk to you like they knew you. You'd be sitting in a restaurant, they'd just sit down and start talking to you. That was one of the bad things about being over like that. And they would start talking about their family like you knew them. They'd just know you off the TV. But, you know, you would sit and talk, and, you know, so I've always had fond memories. I wouldn't like to live in the town, but I've always had fond memories of the town, you know.
I was going to ask, was it hard going out and stuff like that?
Well, back in the early day, yeah, and it wasn't hard getting a date. If you was looking for that, and like I said, you didn't have to buy a beer when you went to the bar. Everybody's wanting to buy you one and pat you on the back. Or, I mean, the show got a 17 rating and a 64 share. There's not another wrestling show in the whole world ever got that. Right. So you just one TV show, you was over. Everybody knew you.
Now, you talked about leaving the territory, going to work for Bill Watts. How did that come about?
That you just brought up with the Jarrett thing. He said Watts was looking for a booker, and he came up and he talked to me, and I said I would do it. So then he said, you want to pick the talent? And I said, you know, and he said, well, no. He said, you come down and look at my talent. And brother, did I. So I flew down to Houston, Texas. Now, I loved Jim Duggan to death. But Jim Duggan was top babyface. Magnum TA had a beard. Another babyface was greener than grass. And Darso was there that just switched him into a Russian, Nikolai Volkov. They were the Russians. Butch Reed was there, babyface. You had nobody you could get no heat on. So anyway, so when I went there and talked, bringing Rick and Robert, he said, what are you going to do in the very first day in? I said, I'm going to beat the Russians. He said, do what? I said, we're going to beat the Russians on TV. He said, Bill. I said, okay. They said, am I the booker or you the booker? He said, okay. He said, you're the booker. So we did the deal. We first went, I started in Little Rock New Year's Day in Little Rock in 1984. It was 10 grand. We brought Ricky and Robert in, beat the Russians that week, because he was a month behind on some of his towns. We brought the Rock and Roll in. They got the belts off the Russians. The next time we went back to Little Rock, it was almost 50. Them boys got over it instantly.
Want to switch tapes? Going back to when you first came into the territory, you talked about the house, how you popped it and stuff like that. I guess you want to elaborate more on that? Just
Well, when we say that, like I said, Lawler, White, and Bass were red hot, and Lawler was red hot as the champion. So they had lost something, and they were looking for something. We just happened timing. I mean, we happened to be Australians, and Jarrett shot the angle, and it was just, you know, like the way Eddie and told you, we dropped Eddie on his head. So, well, I guess some of the stuff that we see when we did something that we carted him out on the stretcher. We'd Paul drive him in the ring, and they slid him out under the bottom rope, put him on that was actually a chair. So they put him on the chair, and they were carrying him out on the chair. So I run and dove over the top rope on Eddie. So when we all hit the floor, it was like his back was, and then he was off for 6 weeks. See what I'm saying? The jump over the top rope, we could all have been hurt at because he's on a steel chair. We're all landing on him. But it meant something, and we all made money off it. Now they're doing that for a high spot. You know, it doesn't mean nothing, but that was the angle that got us over. Then we wrestled Dick the Bruiser and all the Fullers and Buddy Fuller and Robert Fuller and six-man tag, because there was another Australian there named Johnny Gray. So Buddy Fuller, Robert Fuller, and Ron Fuller. That was father and two sons.
right.
We wrestled. We beat the father up. Then they came to the right, you know, that kind of thing. So we had a pretty good run there.
What were your initial impressions of Bill Watts when you first met Bill?
Big belligerent son of a bitch.
Everybody says that.
But he just said I was little belligerent son of a bitch, so we got along good.
Ha. Wasn't there a talent trade too in the beginning? Didn't Memphis get some guys? They got rock and roll and.
Yeah, and Jarrett got kind of mad about it and said it wasn't quite what the deal was, but that wasn't a true story at all. He said you can take anybody you want. So I said, well, the Fabs is red hot here, and you didn't want the Fabs to follow the rock and roll, so you take the rock and roll first, then you bring the Fabs, but that never happened.
Right.
So we took Ricky and Robert. They got over so damn good. The Fantastics is who came in after them. Bobby Fulton and Tommy Rogers. Took them a little while to get over, but they got over. But the gimmick was so about the same. See, we just, the Fabulous Ones, the Fantastics, we just made the kind of the, but Jarrett said that we stole the Rock and Roll Express and never gave him back. That wasn't a true story at all. He just said, take anybody you want for as long as you want. And he got mad at me for, I don't know what the hell for, but I said, Jerry, that was you. No, I never said that. I said, yeah, you did, because they got over. And his territory started going down.
Didn't he get some guys like Rude, maybe Hercules Hernandez at the time?
Yeah, he had a Herc and Rude, and he got a few of them, but they were just green guys. Duggan, you know.
I think Neidhart went there too.
Neidhart was there, so, you know. Bill actually got the best trait.
Right.
Because they had never seen small guys in Louisiana, because Watts had been working and booking and wrestling, and he liked big guys.
How did you get Bill Watts to pretty much agree to using smaller guys?
Money.
Money.
Selling out.
Right.
You don't break it, you don't fix it if it ain't broke.
Did anybody ever, I guess, refuse the job for you or, you know, work a program with you at all?
No, I never think, no. They knew when you come into Memphis, you either work with Lawler or Dundee, you didn't work, you know, that was the deal. And most, like I told you, you're getting most of them ready, some of them ready for Lawler.
I guess also when you were working for Bill Watts, what are some of the guys that you liked working with as far as...
Well, the first year I never worked, I just booked
Right,
it.
as far as like working with, as far as behind the scenes.
Well, Jim Ross was there. We got along pretty good, and his son Joel was there, and Bill would come to the TV meetings. So that was really what the clique was, Watts, me, Jim Ross, and Joel, his eldest son. And we just, you know, sit and talk things over or do whatever and add to, take from.
How long did you last there for?
I was there 2 years.
2 years.
And I just quit because it's a big territory. And Bill wants you to go to every town, and he would run sometimes 2 on the Saturday and 2 on Sunday. 3 TVs on a Wednesday, you know, you just get burned out. And you know, he says, the your shows, you be there. You know what I mean? So you had to be there, you know what I mean? So you were on the road every 7, and you go 7 days a week. Just burned out, man. You just stand to 2 years. Then the Rock and Roll went to Charlotte, and the Midnight Express went to Charlotte. And I told Bill Watts this too. Jimmy Crockett and Ric Flair walked into the building with the Superdome. We used to run the Superdome show. I said, brother, Jimmy Crockett's here. He said, oh, what's Jimmy doing here? I said, if you don't know, brother, you're as blind as Ronnie Millsap. He's coming here to look at the talent, and I'm telling you. Ah, no, his ass. The next thing, Magnum TA's gone, because Dusty was the booker over there. And he'd been in and out. Rick had been in and out. Midnight's gone, Rock and Roll's gone, Magnum TA's gone. That's what you came for. So I just getting tired. And hell, I went. I was, you know, Donna and Bobby were married by then, and so my wife wanted to go, so I went, stayed there a year. I didn't care much for Charlotte. I came back to Tennessee.
I remember that. Talk about, I guess, when you were for Bill Watts, what were some of the, you know, more famous angles that you booked, some of the more famous programs you put together?
Well, the nets, Ernie was there before me, and he had them Russians so hot, and no babyface to work with. We run that for a year. So we had the rock and roll on the Russians, then we brought the Midnight Express in, and we had the Midnight Express against the rock and roll. Then we had beat JYD and Loser Leave, and he came back as Stagger Lee. Then we had Watts and Stagger Lee against the Midnight Express. And, you know, then we had the Fantastics against me and Dutch, because I worked the second year. And the Fantastics, me and Dutch, then we had the midget deal where we brought the little midget in, and Bill said, "What you doing with that?" I said, "Yeah, just watch, man." You know, because and I don't know if it's just because he was so damn big, but anything little, Bill, you had to explain to him what you was doing with it. You know, I said, "Well, hell, we're going to let the little midget beat me." And he,
right.
You know, he says, "Well, I know you ain't the biggest guy in the world, but he's a real midget." I said, "Bill, please, you book them big guys." Well, I got to say this for the man. He took over Butch Reed and Hacksaw, it might have been Hacksaw Duggan and the Russians, and he run that program. I said, "Let me run my midget program. Me, Mantel, the Fantastics, and the two real midgets. Let's see who draws who." Anyway, about a month later, he called the meeting. I'll say one thing for me. He said, "Boys, we've been outdrawn by a bunch of midgets." And that's how he said it, but
right.
he at least admitted to it. We was drawn. But it was just because Louisiana had never seen it. Bill had been there for umpteen years.
I guess, why do you think Bill never went national?
I had left by the time he kind of tried. I don't really know. I think Vince also had that dream, and Bill really never did. He was kind of like us, because when he came and worked for Turner, he was like a dinosaur. He was like, you know, he didn't want to change, and you had to be changing, man. It was, you know,
Right.
you just had to be, because Vince was, and
I guess, what is the most difficult thing about being a booker, in your eyes?
keeping everybody happy. You know, you try to, but yeah, and don't lie to them. If somebody calls you and says, can I come into the territory, and you tell them, "Well, I can got this spot for you. You'll never be past the fourth match, because we got this angle going and this angle," and, you know, then they know. But if you just say, "Yeah, come on in, I can do this," and you don't do nothing, that's when they get mad at you. So that's the hardest part. Then booking your friends, and then when the run's over, telling them they have to leave. You know what I mean? When the time's over, you liked everybody in the program, you like working with them, somebody has to go.
Right. Was it pretty tempting booking yourself on top a lot, or?
I never really did that. I know I liked to, I was always I guess my ego was a little different from Lawler's on the way that it worked. He liked being last, and I liked being the first angle, because the people ain't tired when they see you. When you're the main event, sometimes if there's 3 angles before you, they're pretty well tired by the time it gets to the ring. So, you know, when I worked with Lawler, he was always on last, but if I booked it, me and another angle, I'd like to be the first angle match after intermission. People just went and got a drink, they're all buzzing, sitting down, and they're not tired, and everything you do, bam, bam, they're popping on. So, you know, I'd book myself in a main event angle, call it that, but I wouldn't be the last match.
How would you compare the fans from Mid-South territory to the fans in Memphis?
No, they weren't really no different, because they bought the same stuff that we took from Memphis and gave it to them down there. I mean, New Orleans was Bill Watts' Memphis. You know, and Monday night it would sell out. You know, we'd go down there, the same programs, you know, the Russians and the rock and roll, and, you know, just same thing. So, and the Fabs would have got over too, but at the time, that time, Jarrett was mad at us, so we never got them. So we never got to test them. Then they went off on their own.
Right. Did you ever see any incidents with riots and the fans going crazy down there, especially at Thibodeau?
Fights in the, yeah, you go down that end, and Homer was a little thing, and then guy Buddy Landau was. Buddy's always fighting somebody, you know, just different guys. "Buddy, please, you don't draw a dime fighting the marks on the street, you know. You get hurt, but, you know, yeah, you get a few of them. But most of it was the further south down, like you said, Thibodeau and down that way. They were usually a hot Sunday afternoon. You were down there, and they'd be drinking.
12 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah. We had Jimmy Garvin against gentleman Chris Adams one time. Jimmy was the heel, refused to heel. He said, "I ain't healing," and I didn't blame him. They would have killed him. But anyway, they had a hell of a match. They just wrestled, but he never really did nothing to piss the people off. He just said, "I'm not, when I go to the ring bell, I'm not healing," and Precious ain't going.
Right.
And I didn't blame him not taking either one or doing, because them people were right, man. It was a hot, steamy Sunday afternoon. They'd all been drinking, seemed like since Friday. Couldn't move, shoulder to shoulder. Building was jam-packed.
I guess as far as Buddy Landau, you and Buddy did the Billy and Buddy show. What are your memories of that show that you guys did?
I have real good memories, but I bet Buddy don't know nothing about it. But anyway, that's neither here. You know who Buddy was. But anyway, that was just an angle with me and Lance Russell. Nobody had ever slapped Lance. So I went and asked him. I mean, I said, "Lance, can I slap you on TV, man?" So he said, yeah, where are you going with it? I said, well, I really don't know, but we just got to do something. This is what we'd like to do. So he said, yeah, no problem. So I slapped him. You know, I said, he called me a loser. I said, if you call me a loser one more time, I'm going to slap you. So he said, well, you lost the match, Bill, and that's all there is to it. Bam. So then the next week he said, I ain't interviewing you or Landale. So we built the set, did the deal, and sat there, did a bit of Bill and Buddy show, and that was really just so Mantell and Lawler could come out and bust it up. But it worked. Everybody, people talked about it. It was just different.
It's good stuff. Memories of Andy Kaufman.
Well, that was Lawler's deal. I mean, I didn't really know much about him. He was nice to talk to. He was not, you know, you go to the dressing room, he was friendly enough and talk to him. That was him and Lawler's deal. They were really just kind of going to do one or two deal, and they realized it was clicking. They got on the Letterman show, and Andy cursed, and Lawler slapped him and all that, and then they got into boxing match, and then they run hell 6 months, a year maybe, I don't know, but he was a good guy. He's always done.
When he came to the locker room, did he try to work the boys, or was he respectful? Or?
No, he's very respectful. He kind of sit in his own. And when you go into Memphis, you have them little cubicles up the front, the top. You know, if you've been there, you used to come down with Joe. You know, so you know where Lawler's room was, my room was, and you know, and the rest of the crews. And he had a little room, so he sat there by himself.
You talked about leaving the territory for Bill Watts. I think, was it Eddie Gilbert that took over the booking at that time?
I really don't know. Oh yeah, when I left for the Watts, I thought you meant Memphis.
Right,
no, yeah,
okay.
Eddie and Terry Taylor.
Right. So you ended up working for Crockett for a little bit?
Yeah, a year.
Okay, what was that like? What are your memories of Jim Crockett and your initial impressions?
Oh, Jim was, some days he'd look at you, walk right through you and not talk to you, and other days he'd jump on your back and carry on with you. He was a moody type person. And then they were opening up Kansas City then. They took over Kansas City. Charlotte West, Dusty used to call it. Well, guess who got to go to Charlotte West a lot? Me. So Dusty was the man in Charlotte. So, but they had a private plane. They flew you out there and bring you back, and you know, we trying to get it going. So, I mean, I enjoyed it. It was just, you know, like I said, Bobby and my daughter was there, and made my wife happy, I guess, the grandkids. So, you know, I'd get on that private jet and fly out there and fly back, play big shot. You know. So it was all right. Bob Geigel was good to be around. Bob Brown was good to be around. When we got out there, that was the guys out there. So, you know, now I was on a guarantee, so it didn't matter draw or not. So
right,
I was making money.
How was Dusty like to work for as far as a booker?
Oh, I was got along pretty good with Dust, but you know, the time. Now Florida, I don't know much, but when he was booking and working and all, I never really worked for him then. But when he was just like on the committees and all that thing, he was, you know, he's good. He'd tell him things, he'd listen to you, and well, he's old school.
Did you ever get to go down to Florida, work for Mike Graham or Eddie Graham at all?
I never really went down there. No. That's where we was going, like when I told you Bobby Shane had took the book in the plane crash. So, but I mean, I knew Mike because we brought him into Memphis, and I knew Eddie because he'd come in too, you know, Jarrett. And then we're buddies, they'd come in sometimes work shots for us, but I never went to Florida. Oh, well, yeah, we did then. Dusty, when he was booking for Charlotte, he kind of booked Florida a little bit, and we went down there, and I kind of
worked TVs, I think. Worked
TVs there and booked that for a little bit. Then we did angle with Tracy Smothers, where we made him an illegitimate Armstrong.
Right.
And then we did the birthday cake. Dusty didn't particularly care for that. I don't know why he cut the program off, because it drew a hell of a house in Lakeland, and that was Dusty's town. So.
Right. Do you think he cut it off out of jealousy, or?
Well, we never got. You know, some of them say yes, some say, you know, I mean, we'll never know because we never got to go back and see, but we'd keep climbing.
Right.
But the initial angle drew. Let's put it that way. And then he just said, "Let Bob get over you." We'll just start it. This is the
right.
He's the man. He's the boss. We're all working for a paycheck. 1, 2, 3. Program over.
Who else did you get to work with in Crockett territory?
Well, me and Barbarian was teamed up. We worked against Dusty and Ivan. Went to Nikita.
Right.
When they did the Twin Tower things, that's what they call them. Remember, they switched Nikita, and so we were in a couple of tag matches and things with them, and you know. But mostly me and the Barbarian was on that plane going mainly to Charlotte West. So my time for that year was going out there with the Barbarian. Another nice guy, man. He's a real good guy.
Then you went back down to Memphis again after that.
Yeah.
And I mean, there was a lot of young talent coming up now in Memphis that pretty much went to Vince after a while. You've pretty much seen a lot of stars rise to the crop, like Bam Bam Bigelow. He came through the territory.
Yeah, he came through.
What are your memories of Bam Bam?
Well, all them guys. I mean, Michaels and Janetti and all them. When you saw them, you know they had it. I mean,
Right.
the first, I actually met Shawn Michaels in Houston, Texas when I booked for Watts. And Jose Lothario called Watts up and told him he taught the kid. So when he came to the building, I mean, me and Watts was there, and this 18-year-old kid standing there, and I said, well, what can you do? You know, and Shawn wasn't being sarcastic, he just, well, kind of everything, you know, and he wasn't lying. The kid could work at 18, I mean, he's talented, you know, so you knew right that day, the work at him, and he had it.
Right.
Well, look at it now. You see what I'm saying? But you knew. You know, I guess it was like watching Elvis for the first time. Whatever he had it. Michaels had it.
What about Bam Bam Bigelow when he came to the territory, I guess, with Larry Sharp?
Yeah, he had it. I mean, big old boy, tattoo on his head. Larry Sharp would do the talking. Bam Bam fly around for a 400-pound guy. I mean, he had it. I mean, he's just big old bump taking, you know, and understood the business.
What about Scott Steiner? Is it true that Scotty came down after he worked the territory, maybe one match in NWA, and then he broke somebody's nose, and then they sent him down to you guys?
I don't know if he do that part. The only fight I almost saw ever get in a fight was Scotty and the Bass Valley Beast, but never ever really happened. But it was, you know, he was good to get along with. Him and Jeff Jarrett was teamed up for a long time down there. He wasn't near as big Papa Pump is today, but
Right.
he was, you know, but he still had a hell of a body and worked and understood and good guy to be around, sold, and, you know.
What about Dustin Rhodes?
Dustin got over. He came in, you know, up there, and him and I were teamed up, and we were the tag team champions for a while. We rode up and down the road together, so kid could work, understood. Well, why could he not work? I mean, look at his genes. His dad, you know.
Right. Now, you talked about Ric Flair earlier on. What are some of your early memories of Rick, the Nature Boy?
He was a smooth worker, man. And the same thing when he came in, you either went an hour Broadway, you put him over, DQ, or do whatever. He got kind of mad at me one time. We shot this angle for me and Rick to work. And that's when they were coming in. They had worked Lexa, and Dusty was there. They were coming in. They were a big show in Memphis. So we promoted a month for Rick. So, and this is what I'm telling you. I mean, business is business, and whatever is whatever. So if he'd come in and work with me, we sell that. He leaves. Do the thing. Lawler had broke. He'd either left or broke his leg. We needed all the help we could get. So I went out on TV and I said, if anybody beats me for this belt today, can wrestle Ric Flair, because when you're the Southern champion in Memphis, doesn't matter who it is, what it is, it's a title shot. So I get Coco Ware. Just started, and he'd been around, but I mean, this is his first big deal. So I put Coco over. Don't tell Rick, don't say nothing to nobody. Rick comes in, gets into the cab, I guess, and the cab driver says to him, "You wrestling Coco Ware tonight?" He said, "No, I'm not." He said, "I'm wrestling Bill Dundee." He said, No, you ain't." He said, brother, he came into that Coliseum fuming. So we had a little room in there, he's screaming. I said, "Rick, please calm down, man, calm. No, we ain't going to draw a goddamn dime. Nobody knows." I said, "Would you look at the building? Jam-packed, man." So he calmed down. He just thought we'd do the thing. And I said, "No," I said, "because when I put you over, or whoever, I'm dead. Not dead, I have no opponent. I'm trying to get an opponent for next week, because you'll be able to sell that somewhere else in somebody else's territory." And then Dusty was there. So Dusty comes down and we talk and we do the deal where Dusty jumped there. We beat the guy, then I was trying to keep Coco going, so I run down, jump in, and Dusty jumps in, we get a big smudge, but Rick had pinned him 1, 2, 3, but Coco gets the heat back on me, and that's what I was trying to get. And they had a hell of a match, man. Tore the house down. And it, you know, it did what we tried to get. It did. I had an opponent for the next week, still sold out. Rick was mad for him, and I could imagine him doing it. He gets in a cab driver, you think all months you've made promos on Bill Dundee, and he end up wearing a Coco, and he didn't know Coco. I mean, personally didn't know Coco, but Coco could work.
How did things change when NWA cut off its affiliation and was strictly AWA when they split? AWA and NWA.
As of us, we always used AWA mainly. I mean, the NWA, I mean, people rambled on about that thing, but I don't really think people understood what that was. Do you all kind of know what the NWA was?
NWA?
Yeah,
AWA?
it was the National Wrestling Alliance.
Right.
But do you know what the National Wrestling Alliance was?
Pretty much.
It was 12, 15, 20 powerful men controlling 100 other men. Had nothing to do with the National Wrestling Alliance. It was just them. If you didn't do what they asked you to do, you didn't go to the other one. It was to give them power. Nothing to do with the wrestlers. People talk about it like it was a great thing. Well, it really wasn't. Not for the boys.
Right.
It was nice to be the NWA champion and just, well, I'm the National Wrestling Alliance champion. I'm the AWA champion. I'm the WWF champion. their territories wasn't as big. The NWA was bigger because they had like all the South Florida and Watts and all them, and the WWF basically had what they had up north, and then Gagne had his AWA, and the rest was NWA. But it was just to control the boys. They had meetings twice a year in Las Vegas to go and talk about nothing. One of them was Lawler beating the Giant. Why he shouldn't have, you know, just.
Speaking of AWA, what are your memories of Vern Gagne?
I never really was around Vern much. I mean, he came down, him and Jarrett kind of did try to do a pay-per-view type thing together one time.
Super Clash 3, I think?
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
So that was one time that me and Greg and Mike Graham all lived together over in Charlotte when we all worked for WCW. I got along good with Vern. He would, Greg and me and Mike and him lived together, and he's a good guy, But Vern, I never really was around him much.
I guess you and Jerry did get a shot at one time, I guess, for the
AWA titles. Yeah, they came down and put them on us in Memphis, and we went back, returned the favor up there So that's really the only couple of times I was around Vern as far as working for him.
Okay. Speaking of other guys that made a big start in Memphis and later went to WWE and became very famous, Undertaker, Mark Calloway worked the territory.
Yeah.
What are your memories of Mean Mark?
I mean, Mark doesn't care for me for one. I really still don't know to this day for why, but I mean, I have tapes of him and me working together, and he's selling and me selling and drawing money, and I still don't, he just come to me one time, he said something about his personal life. I said, okay, brother, I'm sorry, I really don't know what the hell you're talking about, and still don't to this day.
Huh. What about Sid? Sid Vicious?
Big Sid Vicious?
Sid Justice?
Well, Sid was, when he was on, he was on. And sometimes Sid pretty independent too. He didn't care for it. He didn't do it either.
Memories of the Von Erichs?
Jerry hooked up a deal with them, and we were going over to work at the Sportatorium. All nice guys to be around. Fritz, he would sit in his big office and not really come out or say nothing to nobody. Kerry was, but you know how they all were by that time. So I mean, and we used them with Watts, up there. So I was around them. I booked them when I worked for Watts. So I knew them all, and I got along. Like I said, how could you not like Kerry Von Erich? He's nice to everybody, and So the other two little ones, I didn't know much about them, but what's Kevin and Kerry, we worked with them. They always did whatever you asked them. So sometimes it'd be late, but apart from that.
Did you see the wild behavior at all at any times?
No, they never. You could maybe say he might have done something, but never in front of with me. No, but I never hung around with him as far as after the show.
Right. Did you bring Jamie around a lot early on?
Well, yeah, kind of. Not so much to the matches. See, this is the difference between I think today and if you had a program going, you would tell the people to come to your house on a Sunday, just to, sit and drink beer and bullshit about the program they were in. Jamie, a little kid, he looked like, I saw that bad guy on TV. What's he doing in my dad's house? He never really quite understood. Just a little bitty fella, right. But he's sitting. He wouldn't come near the hills either. He'd sit and watch him. He'd look, because he would think fight's going to start. He did. So you like the Bombers, you'd bring them over, tell them what we're going to do, and you'd drink beer and sit and things like that. Went on more that day, and I don't think it goes on like that at all today. It's all done in an office. And then when he got bigger, he just, you knew he wanted to be another one. He never got a wrestling lesson off nobody. He'd come to my school a couple of times. He'd run across the ring and take a bump, and he'd say, okay, I'm a wrestler. And he had it.
Right.
He just, the one. See, this is what I believe about most athletes and wrestlers. It's in you, and you bring it out. It's like them race car drivers, the ones that can drive NASCAR. It's in them, they get a good car, and they bring it out of them. So now they win races. Same with the wrestling business. But it ain't in you. Care what you do, you ain't gonna put it there.
It's pretty true. In '86, you had a good feud with Steve Keirn. What are your
yeah, that was just before the Fabs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stiff, hard, and you earned your money every night. Keirn was one of them. Well, and like the Grahams, Eddie was like that, and Mike was like that. I mean, we were all kind of, you were making that guy in the front row believe, and whatever it took.
I guess Billy Travis. What are your memories of Billy?
Oh, I love Billy Joe. There's not a bad one about Billy. You can't live in the fast lane, brother. But you could not dislike him either.
I was going to ask you, what are your memories of the day he got arrested on TV?
Well, it wasn't really TV. It was the spot show. That was with the girl thing you're talking about.
I think so, yeah.
I think, see, he was kind of set up on that too. That was a badass thing that happened to Billy. The girl came back to the dressing room and everybody was talking to her. And he asked her how old she was, and she lied to him and said she was 18. So I was there, Jeff Jarrett was there, Billy was there, so we had to go to the ring. So me and Jeff, so Billy and the girl apparently had pantyhose on, and she took them off herself long before it ever got to whatever. So her boyfriend finds her with Billy. I guess they're down kissing at the bottom of the stairs. So it's like everything else. It gets all blown out of proportion of what it was. They charge him with sexual battery and this and that, and they take him off to jail. But the girl lied to the man, me and Jed, and said she was 18, and Billy, you know, what the hell, a good-looking girl. Billy's a young guy. That happens. That's what life's about.
Right.
But her boyfriend caught her. So she, oh, well, no, and he did that. And the girl just started screaming and hollering. And the headmaster came in, wouldn't let nobody talk, just called the police and took Billy off. So it was a kind of a set-up job as far as, because she was 16 or something.
Right, right. What happened when Jerry Lawler was in trouble with fooling around with the girl? As far as
I wasn't there. Wasn't even in the territory. So I can't tell you. Not just all hearsay. Don't count for a hill of beans. He obviously beat it. So.
Right. As far as the territory, what do you think led to the downfall of the territory? Do you think Vince was raiding so much of the talent?
Yeah, it took all the talent away.
Right.
Me and Lawler were the last two, and then Lawler kept saying he wouldn't go, but when he offered him the right deal, he went. So.
How did you find out about it?
That he was going.
For Raw, yeah.
Oh well, I went to WCW before Lawler went to the thing. So I went to Turner and came back, and Lawler was still there. Then he just said Vince gave him a hell of an offer to go up Monday nights and do the commentary. So that's kind of, I mean, you can't. The territory was down. It was losing money. The talent was all gone. It was all with Vince. And when after he left, you know, there was really bare bones then.
I was going to ask you, you were there for the Larry Burton deal when all that went down?
Oh, when they sold the thing and all that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that whole entire fiasco?
Con job, Larry Burton.
Right.
And I told the guy from Cincinnati, I said, you the boy buying this? He said, yeah. I said, what are you buying it for? He said, for the merchandising. I said, merchandising? Ain't no fucking merchandising. Well, what are you going to merchandise? You said, I ain't going to merchandise me. I own me. So then if you're part of this. He said, no, I'm buying this territory. I said, well, brother, if I was you, I'd keep your money. And that was all I said to him. Huh. So the next thing I know, they buy it, and next thing you know, there's a lawsuit. And
one thing led to
I think one thing led to another, and then you discover Larry Burton has about 20 aliases. He's 20 other guys with different names, apparently, and you know, But I didn't like Larry Burton from day one. I mean, Lawler met him in California somewhere, and he brought him around, and I told him I didn't like him. Then when he kind of tried to run the thing, shooting angle, I said, man, you're goofy. He took a guy from Canada. We talked about doing this angle in Memphis with Brickhouse Brown, Jamie, me, and somebody else in a pawn shop, and doing a deal and coming in and smashing up the deal. And he took a guy from Canada, and can't think of his name, from Louisville, and shoots the same angle that we talked about doing in Memphis up. It never drew a dime. And I told him, I said, brother, you're just grasping at straws. I ain't going to draw you a dime. Mike Samples, just because he was from Louisville, and the kid was from Canada. I said, I don't care about this kid from Canada. This was going to be the angle of, you know, the brick house and Reggie's Black, and the thing was going to do it in the pawn shop. It was all a whole different thing. This was shot from Memphis. He heard the story and took it to Louisville and shot it with Mike Samples. Did not draw a dime. Then he made Mike Samples the booker. And that was then to Bill Dundee as guts to go.
Ha. Speaking of, I totally forgot about this. When you went to Dusty and worked for Crockett, I guess you worked Starcade 86, I believe, for them, right?
Yeah.
What are your memories of Starcade?
That was me and Barbarian when we did the thing, and then we put them over. In fact, guy showed me a picture out there. That's kind of how I remember it. Right. Me and the big Barbarian working Dusty and Nikita.
Right, right.
So.
You also you worked with Wahoo too, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, I worked a little bit with Wahoo. I love working with Wahoo. He chopped the shit out you, but apart from that, you could not like Wahoo either. He's one of them guys that just, you know, right. He was, you know, big star football player, wrestler, all these, you know.
What are some of your early memories of a young Jeff Jarrett?
Good basketball player. And
how would you rate him as a worker?
Good legs and skinny top. Fair worker then, fair worker now.
Did you see potential in him at all, or?
That thing you called it ain't there. His father knew it ain't there either. But he
still pushed him because he was did it bother a lot of talent?
No, because you know. And then Jerry, see when Nick Goulis was there pushing George. Now, Jerry used to knock him, and he said, if my boy ever gets in, cause see, Jeff never really showed any interest in being in our business till he was 18 or 19 years old, and the other one, Jeff Jr. Jerry Jr. never did. So he wasn't around it like Jamie was. So I never even thought he would get into business. So then they brought him in as a referee, and me and Buddy shot the angle where we beat him up, and his dad jumps in, we go poke his eye out and all that kind of thing. So his dad was smart enough to put him with two of the best workers in the territory to carry his kid.
Right. What are your memories of Doug Gilbert's shoot promo on TV?
I never saw. Oh, that was that. I would still believe that was a work.
Yeah.
So I don't really know that we're going to sue. Is that the one where they go sue? They were going to sue one another and all that.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that was that. I still believe it was a work. Doug don't say nothing about it, and the Lawlers don't. So or Brian Christopher. So I really don't really know nothing about it.
What are your thoughts on Terry Funk, another legend?
Another guy you can't dislike. Another guy it's funny. Another guy it's what you see is what you get. And Terry's just Terry Funk. Same 20 30 years ago as he is today. Just like us all, we're slowing down a little.
I guess who are some of your favorite managers from Memphis?
Well, Hart was hard. I mean, he was the one that there hadn't been one. Jim White and Sam Bass, and Sam Bass he got killed in the car wreck, and there wasn't a little area where they didn't have any. And then Jimmy come along with Lawler, so the impression of me seeing Memphis is Hart. And then downtown Bruno came, Cornette came. Who else did we have? And Nate Tourette, just a few local guys. So you'd have to say Hart because he had the longest run, and Cornette because he, where he went, and then I took him to Louisiana, gave him that tennis racket and all that stuff. So it'd have to be Hart.
How did you wind up in WCW managing William Regal?
Invented him to keep a job. So they were going to send him home. And I like Steve. He's a good guy. They didn't know what to do with him. He was a wrestler.
Right.
So they make him a lord. So they were going to put Larry Sabisco with him. I said, what the hell are you going to do with Larry? He can't, at least I'm British.
Right.
Now, you saw the get up we got. So, and then I liked Regal. So then we worked the program. Remember the deal when he worked against him?
Yes.
Ratings jumped. Bischoff said it wouldn't work. I said, fuck you, Bischoff, it will work. He's an idiot then, he's an idiot now. And I still think he was working for Vince and sent WCW down the tube. Maybe wrong, maybe not be wrong, but he's the only one there, in. You tell me.
It was the boys running the asylum, basically?
Yeah, that's what I mean. So Bischoff was the, and then we said booked the Saturday night. He said, nobody will buy a ticket to see that. He said, if Bisco's old. Bullshit, he can wrestle. Regal can wrestle. The name of the thing on the marquee says wrestling. Anyway, they put him on Saturday night. Remember the Saturday night show? That was his baby. Ratings jumped.
How did you wind back in WCW after Memphis? You went back.
Bill Watts went there.
You came in with Bill for one.
And then Bill called me and brought me back in, and he.
Were you helping at all, booking it all at the time, or were you pretty much?
Well, I went, to help Watts. Then Dusty was there, and so then Watts got himself fired because he had one of them contracts that he got paid if he was fired.
Right.
He made a lot of money and didn't have to be there, and didn't like it.
What do you remember about when Bill got fired? Wasn't it have to do something like a letter about Hank Aaron too, or something like that?
Well, he called.
Racist or something.
He called the girl. He left a message on it, but he did it intentionally. There's
Right.
no way in the world he ain't gonna tell me he did it. He said, "Y'all keep your big fat ass at your desk instead of being on." He said it on the phone. Well, he's not stupid. Hammer and Hank was the man. He didn't like no women's slurs, racial slurs, and none of that other things. I mean, I met him a couple of times. I guess he was a good ball player, but I ain't a ball. So I mean, he's a ball player fan. So I mean, he just, everybody thought Hammer and Hank, but he didn't mean nothing to me. But he had a lot of power at that damn station, let me tell you.
You talked a little bit about Eric Bischoff. What were your initial impressions of Eric, and why do you feel he was an idiot?
We can't be too much of an idiot. He's got a big job, and I'm sitting here talking to y'all. No, he just, he learned in a wrestling territory, and just, he just never seemed to me to do what wrestling was. But maybe he saw what we didn't see. I don't know. Maybe we were dinosaurs in our own territory. But I mean, you'd give him an angle, and he wouldn't take it. And then he would do the thing. Did you ever see the one that did float the ring?
Yes.
The superstar wanted to do that 2 years earlier. No, that never worked. I said, bullshit, I've done it. Well, when I left, see, he was pretty smart that way. And the scaffold match, who did the most of them in the whole wide world? Yours truly. Who got the credit for inventing it? Dusty.
Right.
Turner, Jimmy Cornette and the Midnight Express and the Road Warriors. They hadn't seen a scaffold match.
Let's talk about them, actually. Your first early memories of the scaffold matches.
Well,
how'd you come up with that whole concept and everything?
I didn't. The first scaffold match was horrible. It was Jerry Jarrett and Don Green. So Jerry says to me, well, I grew up in the circus. I told you I was learning to try to be the wire walker, do the trapeze and all that kind of stuff, and you're a kid on circus. You just do that anyway because you're just there, and it's there, so you try it. So anyway, I said, no, I ain't scared of heights. He said, well, let's have a scaffold match. He said, me and Don Green did one. Well, brother, Jerry's description of that scaffold match and what it actually was horrible. It was a 6-foot ladder at either end and a plank and 2 guys holding the ladders, and they never stood up once on the plank. He told me they did this and they did that. A guy gave me the tape of it. So we were on the bus going to Dallas one day. I said, yeah, I remember the scaffold match show. Fearless leader here tells you what we did, what he did and he didn't do. I said, yeah, we heard about that. I said, watch, I got it. Somebody gave it to me. I got the tape of it. They never stood up. They sat on the scaffold, cross-legged, and they punched at one another, and Don took the bump off it. I mean, we were 6 feet of the roof there. When I did them, they were real scaffolds. There were 3 rungs of the scaffold. Hell, me and Dutch Mantell was in one. Dutch looked up. He said, look across to you, eye to eye with the guy at the top level of Memphis Coliseum. He said, what the hell are we doing up here, Bill? I said, I don't know, but you're the one falling off it, so I really don't care. We had the whip. That's where I whipped him. And, I don't know if you've seen it or not. So we had the thing, and I whipped Dutch. He takes the bump. So I did one with Dutch, one with Coco, one with Bobby Eaton. And then we had a tag match, Austin Idol and Tommy Rich against me and Lawler. That one wasn't the best because 3 of the guys up there didn't really want to be up there. But
Bobby was really scared of them.
Yeah, I mean, we're 30 feet in the air. I mean, why are we up there? And we just got, like everything else, they started off on a 6-foot ladder, then I got 12 foot, then 18 foot, then we got 3 tiers. Now we're up as high as eye to eye with the guy in the top row. I mean, it was just like everything else, bigger is better, but it's not because the guy can't take the bump right. And Paulie Dangerously was in one, and he chickened out on the scaffold, and he climbed down the thing, and then we caught him halfway down and kicked him off the deal.
Didn't Lawler break his nose or something like that because he was scared to?
I don't know. I don't think he'd know. I don't think he'd know. But I told him, I said, if I can get to throw you off onto this damn. I hated that. I didn't care for him then and here or whatever. I didn't.
Why is that?
Just some guys rub you the wrong way. He came in with an attitude that he. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So I joking. Maybe I did say joking, brother, when I throw you off this thing, you're going to the concrete. I probably did. So he started to climb down the scaffold. So we climb after him, and he's kicked him off. He took the bump and ran it.
I guess, what are your early memories of The Rock in Memphis?
Flex Cavana, good guy, nice body, just Rocky's boy. I mean, and he had whatever. If you could bottle that it word, would all be billionaires. You knew he was a good-looking kid.
You knew he had it.
Good work, very polite, very mannerable. Still is.
What happened with you and your son? Or I guess it was Wolfie D. What happened with when you pulled the knife on him?
Oh, that all got blown out of proportion too. That was. Cocaine on Wolfie's behalf was the cause of him getting paranoid. Me and Jamie was taking a picture in Louisville Gardens. So Wolfie comes and stands on the other side of me. So Jamie says to him, Wolfie, you better get out of the shot, because if you don't and this guy takes the picture, Bill will sell it and will not give you a dime of the money. He said, well, I don't care. So he stands there. Guy takes the picture. So Jamie had some, and so I get that picture the 3 of us made, and I sell it. So well, that's the first time I've been PG and Bill Dundee on a picture. Selling like hell. So Wolfie comes up to me, he's all screwed up, and back in his drinking days and his wilder days, and he says to me, give me some of that damn money. And I said, I ain't giving you no money. And I'm tired, leave me alone. I was laying, kind of sleeping in the deal. So he says, come on, Bill, give me some of that damn money. He says, Wolfie, Jamie told you. If you stand there, Bill will sell the pictures. And I said, but you have the negative just like I do. Go get some made and you sell them. He said, no, I need some money now. I said, well, I ain't giving you none. So he kept on. I said, Wolfie, please. I don't need to be fighting you. And he said, well, I want some of that damn money. I'm on the picture. So I had my little bag just like that. This little knife in that sucker. So I went and laid back down. So Wolfie left. Ken Wayne was sitting over there smoking a cigarette. The boys. And so back he comes. So he starts again. Come on, Dundee, give me some of that damn money. I said, Wolfie. And one of them little things you'd open with one hand. I said, Wolfie, if you don't leave, I ain't fighting you, I'm just going to cut your belly. So I opened the blade. Now that all got turned into like it was a sword.
Right.
Randy Hales, ah, and he panics because him and Wolfie big time friends. He's probably as zonked as he was. So the two of them get all, oh, Bill got a knife. Not like this. So anyway, they fire me. Now Randy does. He was the booker. Keeps Wolfie. So Jerry Jarrett or somebody must say, you can't very well do that, Randy. They were both, you can't, you know, did you see, oh, he said, yeah, Bill. So he'd call it, he said, Bill, what the hell are you doing with a knife in the dressing room? I said, the same reason you had a pistol for a long time and you had it in there and you pulled it out sometimes. Just, you know, you didn't want to fight, so that ended the fight. And I said, that ended that fight. And I said, well, no, the itty bitty knife, you've seen it, carried in my little black bag. So anyway, they hired me back. We took the program and run with it and told everybody what we did. So it was all just like any wrestling thing. You see it, all gets blown out of proportion.
What was Randy Hale's background? Where did he come from?
Oh, he was around, brother. Eddie Marlin, when used to run Jonesboro every Saturday night. Randy grew up selling programs for Eddie, and hanging around and coming to TV and Gopher, and you know, just when he was a kid, and he'd sell all your pictures and popcorn, and I mean, he was at all Arkansas shows. Then he started coming to TV, and they let him do a little bit of ring announcing at the live show. Then that's how he. I mean, he grew up old school wrestling. I mean, he was around it when, you know, when was what we did.
Lawler in his book said you guys were pretty real rivalries. Do you agree?
Yeah, and I guess we was. I mean, we were, you know, but he knew who the King was, and I knew, and you know, I mean, Kings pull more weight than superstars, so it's, you know, I mean, I never was stupid. I mean, yeah, that's why I lasted so long. You didn't butt heads with him,
right?
Because if you did, he wasn't there. So get everybody ready for him. He's happy. He wants to be the main event. I'm happy. I'm home every night, getting a good paycheck, be the booker sometimes, he'd book sometimes, Jarrett. So, I mean, we're all happy. My ego, I never got into this business for an ego. I got into it, kind of thought it was a shoot when we started and got disappointed when we discovered it wasn't, so 40 years ago, and then money was the object.
What are your thoughts on Corey Macklin? And what do you attribute his recent success?
Success?
Huh?
What success?
Okay, maybe not.
400 people at the last show we did in Memphis.
Really? I thought he had some good houses down there or something. Maybe his big show.
We did a couple of the legend type.
Right.
But that's not Corey.
Okay.
That was just getting on the phone and calling guys that it was already over, and bringing them all back and having them walk to the ring, Sputnik, Monroe, Billy Wicks. But Corey's success is both bombed when the ones he wrestled. You know, okay. So yeah, like I told you, you have to be taught.
Right.
He doesn't even go learn how to.
What about Lance Russell? What are your thoughts on Lance?
Oh, Lance is a good guy. Most people up north, like even the Crockett's and Vince and all, thought he was too southern, like he southern-wide the show, like the way he talked.
Right.
But Lance was as good an interviewer as there was. He could make guys that couldn't talk sound like they could do interviews.
Do you think, well, in your opinion, did you like wrestling as a heel or face better?
When I first started, I guess everybody wants to be the heel. And I'm not talking about today's heel. I'm talking about heel when the heat was right, when they cut you with a knife. And I got cut twice in Louisville. You'd come out, your tires would be flat. There'd be a brick through your windshield. When you had heat, you had heat. You know.
Right.
Told you, tells a funny story. When he was in his day, he said he went to they moved all the whorehouses to 8th Avenue. He said he knocked on the door one time. They met him. Said, "Oh, go away, told you, Yamamoto. You don't spend money here. We don't like you." I mean, that's pretty good when you're taking your money. Now the man himself told me that. So, you know what I'm saying? That's when heat was heat. Today, they don't know what heat is, and people just screaming and hollering. Sometimes you watch the show, people sitting like this. They're killing one another in the ring. Nothing happened. No psychology.
What do you think is wrong with today's wrestling? Since we talked about
no psychology. It's all just show for television. And it's a fast-paced show. I mean, look what you have. Look, wasn't so much when Vince started the way he did it, but today you got reality shows at the yin yang on housewives fighting one another. And look at the Springer show. My boy, you booked for that. I was on it. Me and Jimmy did a Springer show, one version. I said, damn, this is worse than wrestling. Huh. You know, so he just took people off the street and let them look like they were going to make an interview, and then look like they were going to fight, and pulled them apart. What did we do for 100 years? That. And Springer did it with people off the street. So, you know, everybody was, and then Vince started to make it more spectacular for television, and nothing to do with wrestling. Hell, one of them, way back when, they took his Corvette and they filled it up with cement. You remember that deal with the truck? Well, that got to do with that. You know, and just so, The people, my opinion, they still want you to be mad at me or me mad at you, and they're going to fight, and they want to believe it.
What do you think? Well, do you think that wrestling will ever go back to the way it was, or no?
It'll be hard. I mean, that thing called the clicker would have to go away, and 100 channels on your TV, because when it gets boring, although I have a show in Jackson, like I think I've told you, I play the oldies stuff on it, and the ratings are through the roof because old is new again. Didn't Vince do a pay-per-view not long ago with the older guys back there? All, you know, and then USA brought them all back, and the ratings were all good. So people there's still a, I guess there's still a market for it if you give it to them. But we're all dying. Who's going to teach the kids?
It's a lost art.
Lost art. And that's the word, art.
Are you surprised, like guys like Terry Funk and Flair are still, on top to this day?
No, they're not on top the way they were when they were world champions, but they're still predominant players in the mix of what they're doing. And no, it's in them. I mean, it's why we all here. I mean, there's 30 of us here. I mean, I was talking to a guy on the plane coming. I keep saying I'm not going to go to no more matches. I want to call him, the phone rings. Yeah, I'm like, okay, I'll be okay. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I'll be. And I said, why am I going? It's in you. It's just what we do.
What are your thoughts on the lack of kayfabe in today's business?
That's what killed it. Just you have to have, but nobody there's nobody preaching it to them. So, like I told you, when you work with Jared, if you couldn't work, you couldn't do a job on Memphis TV. And if you didn't kayfabe, brother,
killed the territory.
Killed the territory.
I guess, what was your favorite time in your career?
I guess I couldn't say there was a favorite time. It's just when you're younger, life's just a lot different. So I mean, life at today's age and life at 22 and life at 32 and 42 is all, you look at it all different, you know what I'm saying? And I told myself a story, when the beer and the women all tasted the same, I was quitting. All taste the same, so you don't chase the women, you don't drink the beer, you know what I mean?
What do you remember about the fight between Steve Keirn and Coco Beware in the dressing room?
It wasn't a fight. Another thing got blown all out of proportion. Steve comes in, Stan come in, and Coco's in the dressing room. And admittedly, the rock and roll went around to people and did all the things, and Coco was doing the thing, and so Steve was going to tell him not to do what they were doing. He's kind of doing the Fabs gimmick. But how are they going to hurt the Fabs? I mean, they're over Fargo, the whole thing. So Steve asked him to come into the shower, and they were talking kind of in the shower. So the rare looks like 10, 15 minutes, then you hear one whack, bam. I guess that's Steve hitting Coco. So they come out of the shower, nobody fell down, no blood, no nothing. So Steve starts cutting the promo on Coco, and he's backing up. So then all of a sudden, Steve just stopped and said, Coco, this is crazy, the fight's over. So then Coco cuts a promo on Steve. No more fighting, no more, one punch was thrown. That was the gist of the fight, no fight.
That was pretty much it?
It was a gas cord and sucker punching Coco. Huh. He promoed, and then he quit, Coco promoed.
What are your thoughts on TNA?
I have never really watched it, so I don't watch Vince's show either. So
I was going to ask you if Jared ever maybe called you in to help book the territory.
We don't talk. I don't know what
you and Jerry don't talk anymore?
Nah, he's.
What happened there?
Same thing happened with him in Fargo. Remember I told you when they split in Fargo and Tojo stayed with Nick,
right.
And they were all big buddies when they're all running. And I thought they would be. I said, when I went to the office, he said, where's Tojo in Fargo? He said, oh, he stayed with Nick. He said, it's you, me, and Lawler. And we go get a crew. Jarrett preached loyalty, but only to you, to him. The minute Jeff was big enough to do what I did, Lawler broke his leg, never spoke to him for a year.
Wow.
I had hepatitis off 13 weeks, 15 weeks. Never picked up the phone once and said, Bill, how are you?
It's the nature of the business, I guess.
No, that's not the nature of the business. I mean, I called Lawler, hey, you all right, man? How's your leg? Blah, blah, blah. When Sid and Aaron got into the fight, they stabbed and hit one another and all that, I told you, hey, man, it's just what you do. And when you're telling somebody that you see more than you see your wife every day in your house, at your office, and then they get sick and you don't call and say hello, how are you? And then your star breaks his leg playing football. Although you told him not to do it, you can't run the man's life. He said, look, if you ever get hurt playing ball, we're, blah, blah, blah. He never called him and asked him how he was, never spoke to him until he was ready to come back. And I did a lot of personal shit for Jerry that no sense going on because it would just cause of, in his household, you don't need to be doing that, so we're not doing it, so we just,
I don't know if you're aware, but yesterday Jerry had a meeting with WWE behind, I guess, TNA's offices, behind their backs. I don't know if you're aware about that.
I don't know.
I guess, so I was going to ask you earlier on, do you still follow the business, but you just pretty much said you don't watch anything.
I don't watch no wrestling on the TV. It's not what I did.
What do you do these days?
I go, if you not make the note on your car, I'll come get it. I go to repo service. For the last 7 years, I had a titty bar, and we got the state come in and kind of shut it down. We spent 60 grand on a lawyer, and we lost 2 cases here, and we went to appeal it in Cincinnati. It took a year. Old man that owned the building leased the building out. We won the damn lawsuit.
You're still doing the, it's done?
Not done. I mean, we leased, the old man owned the building, said, builders, no, so we leased the building as a bar. Guy just leased it as a bar. Then we win the right to get naked, so we paid for the lawyer, and he has a bar.
Wow. I guess, would you ever come back and book for anybody else, or are you pretty much?
Yeah, I guess, but I mean, what I see and what they see, I guess, would be different. It's kind of like going and telling a young guy what you think of his match today. He looks at you like you're nuts. You're better off just not to say nothing. I mean, now if they're going to say, Bill, will you book an oldies match, or you do what you did, that would be one thing, but jumping off the top rope, and I mean, even the TNA ring, there's somebody that's an octagon or something, isn't it? I mean,
6-sided, yeah.
6-sided. Why? I mean, what is the purpose of that in a wrestling match?
I agree.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, what does it do different that the Ford didn't? It doesn't even look like a wrestling ring no more. See what I'm saying? And what they do in it certainly isn't wrestling.
I guess they figure it's just going to be a draw, you know.
But it isn't. That's what happens inside that square circle.
So if you were put in charge of a company, how would you change the business?
I really don't know if you could go back to what we did. I mean, like they said, we're dinosaurs and we're own business. I mean, you could get a little more real. The kayfabing would be the first thing. You don't ride around together. You don't steal other people's gimmick. If he does this, you don't try to top him. And see, that was the thing about the Booker, but way back in the good old days, and I don't know because I'm not in the dressing room, but we run it from the first match to the last match. And you told the guy in the first match what you wanted, just like you did in the last match. And if you want him to throw 3 punches, that's all he'd better throw. But now, you'll get the main event in the first match. And how do you top it? The same. I was on a local show about a month ago. The guy did a hell of a house. Billy Gunn was on it. Tess was on it. Me and 7. And that was the 4 guys that had any kind of TV exposure, us from the Memphis end and then from WWE. And the kids that run it were hell of athletes. They had a 20-foot ladder in the finish. They stood it up in the middle of the ring. They got the table, put the guy on the table. The guy dove off the ladder, broke the, bam. But at least they went home on that, was the finish. But they had done everything in between. See what I'm saying? And they were in the middle of the card. So the next match was us in the tag match. We just went out and had a Tennessee funny match, what we used to call the Tennessee funny match. We just did funny stuff, got over. You couldn't top what they did. Right. Damn, the finish was off a 20-foot ladder. So, I mean, but what did it mean? And we got a better response than they did, and they damn near killed themselves. One guy jumping off the ladder, and you know what I'm saying? How do you top that?
Do you have any plans on writing a book at any time, or?
I don't know. I've had plans of doing this 100 times, but never did. I got the same setup, could do it at home. Could have done all this myself.
Right.
But it's sitting, and Jamie would ask the question. Well, I started doing it 2 or 3 times, but like I said, I got that oldie show that I do, and we play the thing and do. So, yeah, probably do. But if I did a book, I'd do a video one.
Looking back, you have any regrets?
Yeah, not being 6'6". No, I did good. I guess I was one of the first smaller guys that got to be the booker and, worked for Watts and kind of paved the way for the rock and roll. And see, when I went, small guys went with me. So when I went to Crockett to Watts and stayed in Tennessee with rock and roll, and that my size guy went. So I guess I paved the way for a few of the smaller guys today.
I guess, is there anything you want to say to the fans out there that you never had a chance to say to before?
No, I think I kind of said it every Saturday and on TV. You tell them how much you enjoyed them. I mean, if it wasn't for them, if there's no fans, there's no you. That's like another thing the guys today kind of forget about. Somebody comes up and asks you for your autograph, it's because you kind of likes you or respects you. You could at least take the time to sign it and say, well, okay, thank you, brother. And, doesn't have to move in your house, but, so I've seen some of them that just won't sign it and pretty well rude not doing it. Well, without Mr. Fan, there's no Mr. Superstar or whatever, So I've always been nice to them because that's what fed me and my family for the last 42 years.
How would you rate yourself as a worker on a scale from like 1 to 5, 5 being the best?
7. And I'm not saying that to be egotistical, it's true, because I understood every aspect of the business we did the way we was doing it. Jerry Lawler's 14, any way you want to put it. I mean, he understands it, didn't it? Dusty understands it. before you can have the dragon slayer, you have to have the dragon. You have to make the dragon, then you get the dragon to slay him. My job was to make the dragon, then Lawless, you know, that was how it worked. It worked like that for 25 years in Memphis. I knew what it was. The office knew what it was. Fans never really knew what it was. It was just, well, Lawless a little bigger than Bill, he'll whoop. That was the story we told. That was the seed we planted. And it worked. 25 years.
Were you there for Idol Lawler cage match with Tommy Rich on the ring?
No, I think I may have been on watch when he came up.
Yeah.
That was a Kevin Sullivan deal, did first in Florida.
Right, with Jake.
They did that, so they just kind of copied that. But yeah, no, I think we Watts or Dusty, I was when they did that deal. They cut his hair,
Yeah.
but they didn't really cut his hair.
I guess in closing, we want to thank you for being here today.
Well, just to get back to the thing when they say they cut his hair, again, his hair, they never cut his hair. I mean, in his book, you remember the one where they said they rioted with the Handsome Jimmy deal?
Yes.
You remember that deal? Me and Jarrett begged him, please don't do that, Jerry. Do not go out there and get beat and not cut your hair. No, Bill will run down and do this and do that. Yeah, right. Well, it never worked. He wasn't over as good as you thought he was. And that's just how I see it. The people rioted, burned the seats, broke the windows, tore up the chair. He got beat. He beat me and my wife that got their hair. So every time we'd said, Fargo got a haircut, Al Green got a haircut, Bill Dundee got a haircut, Bill Dundee's wife got a haircut, here comes Jerry Lawler, got beaten, no haircut. The people are used to the haircut.
Right.
So they showed you how much he was over that night because they rioted, burnt the building, broke the windows.
When was the last time you were actually worked, Jerry?
Tonight.
That was
No.
the first time in how long?
No, I think me and him worked on Memphis TV about last week, 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
But it'll be a different match tonight because there'll be a lot of people out there and all them old people, so I'm sure we'll turn it up a notch. And what we did on TV, we just walked and talked. And
You looking forward to the match tonight?
yeah, I really enjoyed working with Lawler. You know, if you put it in him, he never bitched, and he hit you, you never bitched back. I mean, you know, and that's how him and I clicked because we didn't really care. You know, I mean, we wouldn't say we didn't go out there and try to kill one another, but if you banged him hard, he never bitched at you, and I never bitched at him. And I'm looking forward to it. But get back to what you said about the fans. If you people out there really watch wrestling, just turn off what's on your tube today, and they'll bring it back to you. That's just how I see it. I mean, like I said, my oldest show is doing good, and it's all old tapes, 25, 30 years old. So, it's going to real.